good evening, or whenever you happen to come across this here episode. Welcome. Bear with us. We're kicking off another live stream. And I want to do a verification because we've had outages. Muzzle chat war. Let's make sure that this is actually streaming before we kick things off. Still not verified on Rumble. Come on now. Why are we not getting the thumbs up? Looks like we might be good there. Thanks for bearing with me. Well, happy freaking New Year's Eve. What do we got? Just a few hours or so. I'm so excited for 2025. Good riddance 2024. Thank you so much. Was taught a lot in this life. Was also challenged in amazing ways. Made it through. Let's kick things off. Welcome to a muzzled chat. Man, how amped up should we get tonight? Should we just fire this up? Let's go. So, there's so much to dive into. And I wanted to go about things so many different ways. I swear, my brain is all over the place. And yeah, I could hear the fireworks going off. There's a few invites here or there. But I felt drawn. The fact I'm on my feet, the fact I'm semi-functional today, and more on that later. I just feel more so, oh wow, that tone just really shifted. Let's go back to this other one. I more so feel like this shirt right here. If I don't stand for something, then I'm falling for everything. And I want to stand firm on our health and getting our health back. It is so crucial, especially with the challenges that I've been faced with neurologically, and not just neurologically. It's like my very life force has been diminished, my function. It's as though I have mono without having mono. I don't know how many of you are feeling like this, how hard it is for you to get out of bed every day and get just going with anything in this life. That being said, let's do a screen share here. I believe the information we're going to go over here today in an amazing conversation between none other than Tucker Carlson and this lawyer. I believe his name's Aaron. And man, is he educated and exposing so much. It just really lifts the curtain or draws the curtains to see the infrastructure, how things in this country have been designed intentionally, I believe, to our detriment and not our benefit. And the more we can hone in and see, just remove the curtains entirely, we see what's happening behind the scenes. Then we more so can understand the why. Why are they doing this? Why do they not have our health and our best interests at heart? And it does go beyond money. I believe money is the easier part of it to see, but the bigger portion, I do believe, is more evil and nefarious and deceitful. So let's get into all that. But first, man, I really love today's cover image. I'm not much of a anti-face masking, but ultimately, I'm excited for this individual representing the way they are in this image, and I do not put it past them. Do I believe they're wearing a mask to protect themselves from some fictional thing? No. It's, in my eyes, someone willing to stand up. They're just not comfortable sharing their identity, so their whole life doesn't get flipped upside down. Isn't that crazy that warriors standing for truth, standing to expose the corruption. They don't want that level of oppression that we're living in supposedly a free country is unbelievable. But I love the hat. Make vaccine makers liable again. And that is going to be a big point of this topic. Why? As far as the why the pharmaceuticals and the vaccine makers gained immunity, how was that acquired and why is so crucial. But you know what, before we dive into that, I mean, right here, the WHO, World Health Organization, the NIH, probably the CDC, the FDA, that signage could be very large. But even the bandana on the face, my rights don't end where your fear begins. Love that image. Now, there's so many horrific things going on, and it's not that we're to walk in fear, folks. We're to enough is enough. Maybe we need to get the other music back on here. Enough is freaking enough. We need to stop this. We're not stopping it fast enough. All the sprays, the poisoning, the chemicals, everything used in this country that's illegal in all these other countries, down to the pharmaceuticals, these quote-unquote vaccines that aren't in fact vaccines. They're bioweapons, and biowarfare is rampant. It's not just being utilized through the pharmaceuticals in our food and our water, but yes, also our air. And if we don't address this right away, I guess we're going to get what we get, and it sucks. But all these reports, I don't care what anyone says, this fog is not normal. Everyone at the beach today was coughing, kids, adults, and myself. What is happening? And there is just report after report all over the globe. It's not just in any specific area. Guys, come on. Unnatural. Let's remember this picture right here. Vaccinating my family against the upcoming bird flu. Like, get out of here. Get out of here. Not going to happen. What's the most effective way for this man to protect his family? Just toss that TV out of the household. I freaking love it. This gal in the UK speaking out on what's happening all over. Oh, I love this man and how he
first attend.
We won't dive into that. But guys, come on. Imagine a population so brainwashed that you could convince them to be terrified of a virus that they have never seen while spraying them daily in broad daylight, only for them to deny what's happening to them because no one on the TV told them. That's exactly it. But that's enough of my rant. Let's be excited. Let's be proactive. Let's find effective ways to gain traction and just end this. Frankly, it's just happening too slow. Let's clear our skies. Once we have that addressed, let's clean our water. Is that too much to ask in our civilization, supposedly civilized country? Supposedly, like, this just exposes everything. They do not freaking care about us. Why is the parts per million above right here, locally, in my tap water, above the actual maximum contamination level? It's unbelievable. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we going to do in 2025? Are we going to address these things? It's up to all of us. I hope you're as excited as I am to get clean air, get clean water, clean up our food, clean up the actual pharmaceuticals. Oh my goodness. All right, that's enough of all that. Folks, there's so much information we've gone over on this podcast. Be sure to browse some older episodes. Just let the titles maybe intrigue you. Skip through it a bit. But ultimately, the whole purpose was trying a whole bunch of combinations of information throughout this last year to create a whole slew, a whole bunch of seeds that we could go out there and plant within individuals, hopefully bring them into the light. And yes, we dove into a lot of controversial topics. This next year, I want to keep it solely health-based, hopefully help move the needle in the right direction and make these non-issues. Put me out of a job, please. Not that this is a job. Not making any money here. Tell you what. Enough of me. Let's dive into this amazing conversation from none other than Tucker Aaron Siri, an amazing, well-spoken lawyer. Why are folks having a hard time even hearing this information? Well, they go through a lot of that. The actual flaws into the shots, vaccinations themselves, and the data that has been proven, how immunity was acquired and the why. The actual data, the actual truth behind studies or the lack thereof, and much, much more. I tell you what, if I didn't feel that strongly about how powerful this conversation is, more than likely I wouldn't be here on late night New Year's Eve to share it with you. But it's so important that we absorb the information that these two cover right here. And then the next episode, guys, go support Tucker. The next episode that he had with a pharmacy owner is incredible. These are very well educated individuals, very successful individuals that have been on the biggest platforms there is, such as Joe Rogan, like independent. It's what a blessing.
So you're Bobby Kennedy's lawyer. Bobby Kennedy has been nominated by President Trump to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services, HHS. Bobby Kennedy this is just my quick summary, has a very large constituency in the United States. He's not some anonymous character. He's a guy who's been around for many, many years and has many, many fans. So it's hard for his opponents, who are many in Washington, to take him on directly. And so they are trying to discredit him preemptively before the vote. This is my read. And the latest way that they have done this is by accusing him and you of trying to limit access of Americans to the polio vaccine in Washington, the one vaccine that most people think is great. I think that's a fair summary.
Yeah, I would say they accused us of trying to eliminate the polio vaccine. So the New York Times headline was, right, that was filed to get rid of the polio vaccine. That was the headline, and everybody picked it up.
So you are, as we say, objectively pro-polio
well,
in the characterization of the New York Times.
It's a classic retort. If you question anything about the safety of these products, or even their efficacy, or the clinical trials, or the post-licensure safety, the typical retort is, so you want everybody to have polio, huh?
Yeah, desperately.
Like, well,
kind of a life goal.
It's a product. We're just asking questions.
Oh, just asking questions is not allowed. I've been penalized for just asking questions. No
right.
Isn't that crazy? Okay, so that's the context for this question. What is your position on the polio vaccines? And I think as you speak, you were also suggesting what Bobby Kennedy might think you are as a lawyer, but you tell me.
Oh, this is so good.
What the New York Times did is they purposefully, knowingly misled the entire country into believing that a petition that I filed on behalf of a client, not my petition, my client's petition, not Mr. Kennedy, he was not the client, a petition I've never spoke to him about ever, nor did my client, sought to eliminate the polio vaccine. That was the headline. And therefore, because I'm Mr. Kennedy's lawyer, in some instances, my firm has almost 80 people. We have lots of clients, including Mr. Kennedy, including many others. And because we filed this petition on behalf of a different client, nothing to do with him, that questioned one polio vaccine, by the way, and its licensure, and only has to children. I'll get into that. Wow. Somehow he wants to get rid of the polio vaccine. And they knew it was untrue when they published it for the following simple reason. First of all, and if they didn't know this, they're not fit to be a high school newspaper. Okay. One, the petition only sought review, and this was a petition to the FDA, only sought review as to one of 6 licensed polio vaccines, and only as to children. Why? What was the basis of the petition? Which, by the way, should have been the headline. This particular polio vaccine, licensed in 1990, not the Salk vaccine, it's not the Sabin vaccine, it's not the vaccine that you think of when you hear the polio vaccine, okay? This vaccine was based on a novel technology. You need to grow a virus in some kind of cultural medium. Here, they use something called vero cells. These are chromosomally modified monkey kidney cells that are rendered immortal, just like cancer cells. That means they'll grow forever, just like cancer cells. And they end up as an ingredient in every single vial. The clinical trial relied upon to license this brand new novel polio vaccine in 1990, reviewed safety for literally 3 days after injection. 3 days.
What?
That sounds incredible. That sounds like it cannot be true. But it is on the FDA website. On behalf of my client, we FOIA'd the FDA for all the clinical trial reports for the summary basis of approval. We tortured them for years, basically saying, come on, there's got to be more than this. You license it based on 3 days of safety review in the clinical trial after injection with no control group.
How is that acceptable?
There's no way you could know the safety of this product before you license it to be injected.
No control group.
There was no control group.
Isn't a control group a prerequisite for a scientific experiment? Because you need a baseline. What do you compare it to?
The best you could do is compare it to the background rate, which is almost impossible, because then you'd have to figure out the background rate for that exact demographic. It essentially renders the trial useless for safety. But here's the thing. Even if they had a control group, Tucker, even if they did, with 3 days of safety review, what are you reviewing? It takes weeks often for even any immune dysregulation caused by the product to appear, just like it takes at least many weeks for you to build up, let's say, antibodies, so the target antigen in the vial.
Exactly.
If you're going to have self-attacking antibodies, those take weeks as well to develop. And oftentimes when you're giving it to a baby, this product is given at 2, 4, and 6 months. If they're going to have an immune dysregulation, if they're going to have a developmental issue, you're not going to know that for years. Asthma is not even diagnosed until a few years of age. Developmental issues take years. And so, a lot of the issues that we see, I mentioned, my firm's got about 40 people that just do vaccine work. We do other things, but they just do vaccine work. And so, and we don't represent pharmaceutical companies. So as far as I know, we have the biggest vaccine practice in the world that doesn't represent pharmaceutical companies. One of the practices we have is vaccine injury claims. We don't sue pharmaceutical companies. You can't. They have immunity to liability since 1986. It's the only product like that. But you can't sue the federal health authorities in this little program. And so, a lot of the injuries that we see when we do that work are immune or immune-mediated neurological disorders. And those things are not going to appear until typically a few days after vaccination. So this trial, going back to this polio vaccine called, that was the subject of this petition, it was utterly useless to determine its safety. So,
a couple quick questions.
Please.
I've never heard of that. I've never heard of an experiment without a control group. And 3 days is obviously inadequate to judge the safety of, or the efficacy for that matter, of
100%.
So how did federal health regulators sign off on that?
That's an excellent question. Why would the FDA agree to license it? Right? It's a great question. We could talk about regulatory capture. We could talk about the ideological beliefs that the folks who are involved in CBER, which is the biologics division of the FDA, and within that there's an office called the OVVR. That's where the vaccines are actually, licenses are reviewed. And I've met some of the folks who've been in that department, and they're very much, I don't know if ideologues. They believe almost a priori in the safety of these products, even when they're experimental, to such a degree that I guess they let products like this. And I should tell you, if you think that,
because they believe the category of products is so virtuous that the details aren't important.
I'm speculating, right? The important point is they did it. Why they did it, we could speculate on, but they did it.
Well, so I do want to ask you to pause and try to solve a mystery that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I really don't understand it. What accounts for the religious attachment of certain people, particularly affluent, well-educated people, to vaccines as a category? I mean, there are a million medicines out there, and prophylactics, and there are all kinds of treatments for all kinds of diseases, but people take a kind of cooler, less emotional view of them. And chemotherapy, saves lives. But there are downsides to chemotherapy, and most people are like, kind of weighing it out. Is it worth taking chemo or not, right? But vaccines quickly become religious, like almost immediately. Like even the word has an emotional power that no other treatment or medicine does. And this has been true for a long time. Why is that? What is that?
It's a good question.
Well,
have you noticed this, by the way?
Absolutely. It's ironic. There's an irony in the following way. Those who often don't want to receive vaccines, I find are the ones, not always, who have taken the time to really look at the clinical trials, the post-licensure safety, to understand these products more objectively. The CDC will tell you that the people who have the highest rates of completely unvaccinated kids are ones with PhDs and are highly educated, often in the sciences. So what are they learning? What are they understanding that cause them not to receive these products? And so I find the quote unquote, those who oppose vaccines, whatever pejorative one wants to use about them.
They're the ones who believe the science.
Oftentimes, and that's just not me saying it. I mean, I'm saying that when they survey, because they've tried to identify, who are the populations refusing these products? they find they're disproportionately highly educated. There are some folks who don't have access to care and they just don't get it because they don't get it.
Right.
But those who consciously choose, typically very highly educated. Now, to now answer your question, which is, have I seen religion almost when it comes to these products? Yes, I have. But it comes from often the side of the folks who want to make you get them, force people to do it. You must believe what I believe about these products.
That's right.
You must submit.
How dare you ask questions?
Do not ask questions. You must just believe. And you often hear it in the following. I've never heard people say, I believe in statins.
Well, that's
I
exactly
believe
the point,
in,
right?
I believe in vaccines. That's the language they use. It's the language of religion. And you're asking me to speculate, so I'll speculate, which I usually prefer not to do. But it is for a lot of people, and I found this with a lot of the vaccinologists who I've deposed and interacted with. They're often, a lot of them are atheists, and maybe they were brought up in a certain religion, but they have now become atheists. And I think when somebody doesn't have a religion in their life, any religion, they don't believe in God, some God, ends up with an empty space that needs to be filled with something. They have to believe in something. How do you not believe in something in this life? You have to have meaning. It's got to be a really dark place to not believe, to believe everything came from nothing. And if you do, I'm speculating that vaccines start holding a place of religion, that they look to it as, see, this saved us. This is what saved humanity. And I think there's maybe a degree of that this notion that vaccines are, especially those in the medical profession. And I'll give you an example. I'll use the example of measles, okay? The great killer that you'll often hear, they make you feel like everyone's going to die if you don't get measles vaccines. Well, here's the thing. Public health authorities should take credit for the decline in measles deaths in America. They should. But they should take credit in the following way. Between the year 1900, this is all on the CDC website, what I'm about to tell you, and the year 1960, 61, 62, the years before the first measles vaccine in America, 1963, the mortality rate for measles declined by over 98%. Yes, by over 98%. That is, you can just go pull up the mortality data on the CDC website. This is uncontroversial. It's just data, what I just said. Some people get emotional about it, but it's just data, what I just said.
Why would they get emotional?
Well, for the reasons we just discussed. That decline had nothing to do with vaccines. You know how I know? There was no measles vaccine. That's how I know.
What caused that decline?
I think that in part it's the public health health authorities should take a lot of credit for that.
Nutrition,
better sanitation, clean water, getting sewage running on the streets, right? All of these things, initiatives to make sure that there's natural light. Like, remember all the tenement buildings?
Yes.
All these initiatives, even basic things like quarantine. Oh, if you're sick, not the kind of forced kind of stay at home stuff that we're talking about. Just if you're sick, hey, maybe you should stay at home in bed kind of stuff.
Right.
And so that decline, over 98%. You know how many people died in the few years, on average a year before there was the first measles vaccine in 1963, when pockets of this country were still like the developed world? Around 400 Americans a year died. That's 1 in 500,000 Americans died of measles in the years before there were vaccines. Every death's a tragedy. And measles can still kill people just like any virus can in parts of the world that are really underdeveloped. Any virus can kill children, adults. And there were still pockets of America in the early 60s that were like that. But
in short, that industry stole the spotlight as though it's the savior. It's what helped us, when in fact it didn't. When you look at the unmanipulated data, it was other things that attributed to more so health and wellness, not this pharmaceutical industry complex.
But that declining rate of mortality, it was a trajectory that was ongoing, even when the measles vaccine was introduced in 63. So those 400 deaths, which have now gone down, how much of that is attributable to measles vaccine? How much of it is to the continued efforts of public health agencies, right? That could be debated forever. We don't need to. But the important point is this. Long way to answer your question is this. When you listen to public health authorities today, they will say to you, measles is what caused the decline. Measles vaccine is what caused the decline in mortality. They never talk about those other things that they did. They never talk about the increased sanitation, the better, all the different effective measures that they took to get it down by 98%.
Cleanliness and sunlight.
They talk about that last 1%, but they make it seem like the vaccine, which caused that last 1% of decline from 1900, or I shouldn't even say it caused it. You could argue it's up to 1 point something percent was from the measles vaccine. You can't argue it's more than that in the decline. It's not possible.
Wow.
But they ignore that. And the only thing they'll point to is say measles vaccine is what saved us. And that's true of most of the vaccines, actually. When you look at the number of people that died in the year before the vaccine.
It's true that it stole the spotlight once again, when in fact it proven perpetuated the very issue longer and worsened it than actually helped it. It's so crucial that we look at information that isn't coming from certain sources that has extreme conflicts of interest. Or look at the funders. Unbelievable how gullible we've been up to this point.
Typically, the mortality had precipitously declined. For diphtheria, for tetanus, for almost every disease, it declined 90% before the introduction, from the year 1900, introduction of the first vaccine. And oftentimes, in the year before, you were down to a dozen or two, maybe mumps, a dozen or 2 dozen deaths, for most of these things. So, when you talk about religious beliefs, but yet many in the medical community, they'll say, well, how could you not take a vaccine? Millions in America would die. I mean, that's an incredible statistic to think millions in America would die a year if you don't get vaccinated. Because if you just add up the number of deaths in the year before every vaccine that is now on the schedule, putting aside COVID vaccine, because there were hundreds of thousands of deaths and before the vaccine, right? They say, and you can argue whether the vaccine reduced mortality, though there was increased all-cause mortality afterwards. Putting aside the flu shot, which the science is clear doesn't reduce mortality based on numerous reviews, like Cork and collaboration, which I understand now is owned by the Gates Foundation, so maybe those studies will change soon. You're at thousands of deaths, thousands total, and many of those were occurring in years long before the current acute care that we provide, the current increases in all the other factors that cause a reduction in mortality to begin with. So, but nonetheless, this is the only thing they want to point to is vaccines. So I think that's maybe what it is. It fills a space of they have to believe in something, and these products fill that space for them. Because I find a lot of times you can't really have an objective conversation, a non-emotional objective conversation with some people about these products, and they are just products.
How do travelers stay prepared for the unexpected? Well, when you're flying across
I love that they're getting into the psychological impact that all this indoctrination has had now for generations. This is deep. If you just tuned in, maybe restart this episode, but hear them out. They uncover so much. It is such a gift. I applaud these warriors, these gentlemen. Tucker's doing a great job, by the way. It would be fantastic to provide the opportunity to have more of you on these discussions. Uh-oh. Did I just skip over the commercial? I think I lost our place. I should have made note of where it was. I apologize. Let's see where we are.
Thousands total. And many of those were occurring. Last, this is an objective.
Okay. Medication. So it's designed to go medication.
I apologize. We're going to get through this.
The process used to evaluate, review so go to Jace. Go to jace.com/go. JASE.com/go.
Happy New Year, all.
Let's use the code Tucker.
Get it.
Jace
Get
Go
this
with a special
information
discount.
out.
Jace.com/go code Tucker. Was this review the polio, the one of 6 licensed polio vaccines in question? You said received its license in 1990. That was 35 years ago. Did anyone over the course of 35 years say, wait a second, the process used to evaluate the safety of this product was like a joke, woefully insufficient? Did anyone say anything about it for all those years up until recently?
Well, my client, the Informed Consent Action Network, ICANN, has been beating on that drum now for a good almost 8 years with the FDA, starting with an extensive letter about all of these shortcomings in 2017. ICANN was formed at the end of 2016. And you might say, well, the vaccine had been licensed for decades at that point. Why now? Well, first, ICANN was just formed then to really start looking at these things. And also, in 1986, there was something called the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act that was passed. I'm familiar with that. And basically, leading up to 1986, there were only 3 routine vaccines in the United States. That's it. A child in the first year of life received 3 injections, according to the CDC schedule. Okay. Problem is that.
And what were they?
DTP, OPV, and MMR.
For the layman, what are those? So
one is DTP, which is diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis. So that's one vaccine. OPV, which is oral polio vaccine, and then MMR is measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. So each of those are counting three different vaccines on the market, 3 separate products.
So that was the state of play as of 1986.
That was the state of play. That's it.
This is
and they were causing so much
to all of us.
Financial losses to the manufacturers of those 3 products. There were many companies that made those products that all of them went out of business or stopped making them, except there was one company remaining for each of them. and they were threatening to go out of business too.
What?
Now, Congress, in its wisdom, should have let them do what every other manufacturer does for every other product. You make a plane that falls out of the sky, make a better plane. You make a car that gas tank blows up, make a better car. You make a drug that's causing people to have all kinds of complications, make a better drug. Instead, Congress said, you know what? Actually, we'll just make it so nobody can sue you for the injuries for those three products.
So these companies have gone out of business because of lawsuits from people who
were injured. That's right. They were going to go. Yeah, that's right. They were.
So they lobbied government, Congress, to gain immunity. Think about it. No other business industry has achieved that level of immunity. Why them? Because they're supposedly providing a life-saving. No. All the lawsuits say otherwise. This is so corrupt. This actually exposes all the brainwashing we've just been spoon-fed our whole lives. And the whole Western medicine industrial complex has also been indoctrinated further. Most of the doctors, so many of them, luckily, are in it for the right reasons, and they're seeing past it, but so many aren't. They just were told. They weren't taught nutrition. They weren't taught real solutions. It was all pharmaceutical. It was all vaccinated, based and incentivized. It's the curtain, folks. Let's tear down the curtain. We got to see behind the scenes here and what is taking place.
Succumbing to incredible financial losses because of the injuries these products are causing. And so, when you think about it, drugs don't have this immunity, but Congress passed a National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, and that gave them immunity for any injuries from those two products. But not only those two products, any other vaccine, routine childhood vaccine that came on the market thereafter. And so we have gone from 3 injections in the first year of life on the CDC schedule, those ones we just talked about, to, if you look at the CDC schedule today, you get 29 injections in the first year of life. If your child gets all of the vaccines that is currently on the CDC's just in the first year of life schedule, I'm not even counting the 4 shots that you're supposed to get in pregnancy now, which didn't exist back in 86.
Wow.
And that assumes you don't get any combination vaccines. That's what you would get. That's the differential between then and now. And in that same time period, we have gone from under 13% of kids in America have a chronic health issue in the early 80s to well over 50% of kids today have a chronic health issue.
Oh, what could be causing that?
And many of those issues that have exploded are
from 86 to present.
From 86 to present, yes. And many of those chronic health issues amongst children that have exploded are immune-mediated conditions. Okay, so something has gone wrong with the immune system of our children. I'm not saying vaccines cause that all of that rise, but what I am saying is that we do know that vaccines can cause a number of immune and immune-mediated neurological conditions, including some of the conditions.
This is like the root, clearly, as to what shifted the industry from even providing healthy products and the proper data and information. What does it matter? They're just screeching just enough to produce more and more. They'd have us lining up for their freaking injections daily if they could achieve. Why wouldn't they? They now have such a successful business model, and it is bigger than the Benjamins. I tell you. Let's continue, and you'll gain some insight on the more nefarious reasons. Let's go.
That we have seen explode since the early 80s. It's obviously not the only environmental change, right? Because something in the environment had to change between the early 80s and today to cause this dysregulation in our children's immune system, to cause all this chronic disease. Was it vaccines? Was it pesticides? Is it all the new chemicals that are coming online in our food? There's a whole host of factors you should look at. But when you're talking about immune system dysregulation, looking at the products that came online between 1986 and today is pretty critical. And so to answer your question now, you said, well, has anybody asked the question about these clinical trials for this polio vaccine? So when my client ICANN started really looking at this issue, it said, well,
so good.
Are the vaccines a contributor? Because given a lot of vaccines in the first year of life, that's what's causing these immune system issues. Well, the place that you go to assess whether a product is safe is its clinical trial. Why? It's the one time you can determine causation, really, between a product and a claimed injury.
It's supposed to provide that information. Just wait. They'll explain as to why it's not.
You need a prospective, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial typically, or well-controlled trial. It's okay to use non-placebo if you have an existing standard of care that has already been established as safe in a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, right? Okay. And so that process began by looking at the package inserts and the 58 documents. Well, let's look at what the clinical trial data says for each of these products. Not only because ICANN wanted to look at that investigation, but also when our clients call our firm and they say, hey, my kid went in totally healthy, his baby APGAR score perfect, goes in 10 minutes after getting a shot or these shots, has a grand mal seizure, blah, blah, has a cascade of issues. When we go to vaccine court, the program I told you about, because you can't sue the manufacturer, you sue the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and if Mr. Kennedy becomes, for example, the Secretary of HHS, we'd actually be suing him, ironically. You sue the Secretary of HHS, and in a program where almost every claim, you have to prove causation. You have to prove it. Okay? I'm an MD, I'm a PhD, I'm a lawyer. So when I go to court about vaccines, I have to prove things with real evidence. I need good evidence. I don't get to just say stuff. I don't get to appeal to my credentials. Okay, how do I prove it? Starts with clinical trial data. Because everything after licensure is almost all retrospective epidemiological studies. And those, they say, can never show causation. You roll into court with those, they're like, well, that's just correlation. You can't prove anything with that. And by the way, it's not even like there's a mountain of that stuff. If you go to PubMed and you wanted to research the safety of any particular childhood vaccine, you're not going to find a lot of studies. I know they say these most robustly studied products, but there's what they say, and there's a reality to the state of the science. So bringing this all the way back.
And the reality is that they're just not studied very closely.
And this polio vaccine is a great example. And as well as the other two petitions they took issue with in the news recently. So in this one petition, here we are, right? 20-something years later, we've got this explosion of chronic health in our children. And
that polio that he just talked about, only a 3-day trial. 3 days. They're not even, most won't even show symptoms till day 4 earliest. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's not proper data. How are they making all the claims they're making? This is a lawyer, okay? He's done full-fledged lawsuits on this that we all, it can access with our fingertips. It's all out there. He's not lying. If he is, we could hold him liable as a lawyer. Are you freaking kidding me? So he's doing us such a service, exposing what he is with the position he's acquired in this life. Let's continue to hear what he has to say.
And the manufacturer of this product, this was a novel product at the time. The manufacturer's product, 20-something years later, still needs immunity to liability? You still don't know it's safe enough to lift that? Really?
Wow.
It's been how many years? Right? So merits really looking into. Look at the clinical trial. Like I said, on behalf of ICANN, we FOIA'd the FDA for all the clinical trial reports. We sent them letters. We did everything we can to give them an opportunity to show us it's more than 3 days with no control, because that is not believable. Meaning, if you said to me, Aaron, come up with the most nefarious thing you can come up with about vaccines, like just go crazy, I wouldn't even dream of saying that to you, because nobody would believe it. It sounds crazy, but it's right there. It is the reality. And so we filed a petition that I think if anybody in America read, if you didn't read the headline of the New York Times, but instead read the actual petition, you'd be like, oh, that's very reasonable. So you license a completely novel, yes, polio vaccine based on essentially cancerous monkey kidney cells that end up as an ingredient, and you review safety for 3 days after injection with no control. So the petition said, hey, FDA, excuse me, can you require a proper clinical trial of this product, please, before it's licensed? And it was only asked to children.
We're doing a special shout out. Happy New Year.
What the request was in this petition filed on behalf of ICANN. Okay, so let me address two things.
Wait, so that was the ask just for a clinical trial?
Before it's licensed for children.
Yes.
And so what we're asking now, just to understand, it's not even like ICANN wanted to withdraw the licensure of this one product. It's not the point. The clinical trials are done by the manufacturer. They're not done by the FDA.
What?
Okay? They're done by the manufacturer. So how do we get the manufacturer to do another clinical trial that's appropriate? Well, you have to when you file a...
How is the FDA approving on studies they're not doing that are only 3 day long, and they're giving an approval? And that's supposed to be a trusted source for all of us in this country? Yeah, it's not so much a trusted source anymore, is it?
Request with the FDA on their formal docket. Like when Pfizer files a request on this formal docket that we use, the FDA hates that we use it because only pharma companies typically use it. They're like, we'd like to license this product. We would like to change the licensure. We would like to change that company's licensure because of this, right? So we use the same document on behalf of ICANN, and we filed on it, and we said, hey, we want you to take this action, but we have to ask them to change some action the FDA took. Well, the only action they took was to license it. So the valve to ask them, to get them to require a new trial is to say, pause or pull the licensure for this one product until there's a proper trial. Okay. It was the legal mechanism to get another trial. The purpose wasn't to get rid of the vaccine. The purpose was to get them to do a proper trial. And in no universe, to be clear, did we ever think, my client ever think, and I ever think that the FDA would actually pull the licensure. We just thought they'd say, hey, go do a proper clinical trial. They're on to us. It's now been, that petition was filed in 2022. It's been years. They haven't done it. And I'd like to make this point very clear, just super clear. I really got to set this record straight.
The fact they haven't done it tells us everything too. All right, let's hear his point.
Right. It's so important. Even if this petition was granted, there is not a single child or adult in America that would not have had access to a polio vaccine. Not one. That is what makes the New York Times headlines absolutely false. They knew it was false. They intended for the country to be deceived because they're trying desperately to derail Mr. Kennedy's nomination. And I'll just...
But hold on. I know you don't like to speculate as to motive, but it does raise this confusing question. Why would the New York Times... be so opposed to Bobby Kennedy?
Good question.
It's a liberal newspaper. He's a lifelong liberal.
Who owns it?
Kennedy was.
Yeah.
Right.
In their minds.
Yeah.
He's a classical liberal.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I would say that's a compliment. He believes in civil liberties. We all should. But why would the New York Times be willing to lie in order to keep him from getting confirmed? Why is it so important?
I think it's probably a mix, like many things in life, of a number of factors.
For sure.
I think that it matters whether you're looking at the level of the two reporters that wrote this piece, at the level of the New York Times as an organization, at the various people between those two reporters and New York Times as an organization that had some hand in that piece before it came out. I think it's probably a blend of ranging from ideology. I will tell you, these two authors of this article, I mean, they are in the category of what I would call vaccine zealots. I mean, they, I think, are incapable of objectively thinking and looking at this product.
Do you remember their names?
Their names are Cheryl and Christina, and I could pull it up if you'd like. Yeah,
just if people are interested, the first names are great. People can find.
Yeah, they're right there on the article. You can't. But from over the years, and Cheryl has reached out, and you never have a conversation with somebody, and you're like, hey, look at this fact right here, and they just, instead of responding to it, they just immediately go to something else. Right? Because they can't deal with that fact, so they just bring up something else. I feel like
there's too much of that. Why? Is it the programming? Is it the fictional beliefs, core beliefs that are now tied to our identity? So that it's just challenging to challenge like those type of core belief. So that would be a level of indoctrination, programming, brainwashing, frankly. To lose discernment to that point when someone's bringing factual evidence before you and you don't have the ears to hear and you just shut it down, you stonewall, you give the fluoride stare. Now that transitions maybe into the next thing. Is the fluoride stare? Is it the poisoning and these other war tactics that are being deployed that are diminishing our resilience and our brain bandwidth, even the capabilities of digesting said information? I believe it's a mixture of all these things. And I get so much of this could be so challenging to even consider. Oh my gosh, that just changes my whole worldviews. That's not even a world I want to live in. But just because we're fearful of living in that world doesn't change that that's a world we're living in. So that level of naivety, that level of ignorance is only to all of our detriments. And it's crucial that we absorb. So whatever that is, whatever that stonewalling, whatever is causing that, let's try to fix that. And that's where I do believe a lot of the poisoning our health is so crucial. When we have inflammation in our bodies and a suppressed immune system, things to that nature, we just don't have the patience, even that extra level of bandwidth we need to sit here and actually absorb information in these moments. So help us. Reach out to unmuzzledchat@gmail.com or drop in the comments below. Let's get some engagement as to what other angles of attack or whatever you feel is worthy of talking about and considering in this moment, because we need to address that. We need to remove those barriers and get back to normal conversation with one another. I even see people on the same side of a particular fence, whether it's political or even agreement on certain things, start bucking heads just in trying to communicate with one another on said topics. It's blowing my mind. I'm having a hard time personally, and I know a lot of us are, and it's look at the outcome there. Once we have a certain level of challenge with conversation with one another, we tend to not want to even go there. Why experience that level of conflict? We need to get to a place it's no longer conflict. And health-wise, I don't get as to how anyone could be enraged when someone's bringing concerning information that very well could up our health, which would up our quality of life and be such a gift. It just becomes proof in ways that we have become like getting more diminished. More on that.
That's a sign to me of a lack of being able to really objectively evaluate the evidence in front of you. And I feel like that there's an issue there. So there's ideology. And then there's also, you have to always got to look at somebody's financial interests, always, right? Because it conforms their conduct, whether in one way or another.
Financial.
As objective as we all think we would like to believe we are, and we should all strive for it, financial interests affect us. They do.
Of course, yes, they do.
And so where does New York Times get some of its financing? Is there any dollars that flow to their advertising coffers from those who want informed consent, medical freedom, or is there more dollars that flow from pharmaceutical companies? And so, that's maybe a consideration
That's
as well.
Easily answered.
Oh, it's obviously more from the medical pharmaceutical industry flows to the New York Times. I don't believe that there are many medical freedom informed consent organizations with a lot of money. Yeah, there's no. So I don't think that's there. But
is pharma a big advertiser?
Wow.
I don't know the percentage, but I mean, I've seen ads. So I'm not.
So to spin that back, New York Times funding coming from who? Oh, incentivizing headlines, articles, words, having what type of impact on who? Perpetuating this it's all war propaganda. The number one, really utilized effective tool, it's like step one to warfare, is controlling sources of information. It's why I'm so excited to share conversations like this on free speech platforms. Too many are still showing up to the talking heads as though it's news. Nope. Barack Hussein Obama passed legislation, passed bills to allow those talking heads to lie to you and I, we the people, and spew propaganda. That was they were corrupt even before that bill passed, however, and bought out, purchasable. It's not news. They're propagandist outlets. That's what we're getting at. So it's crucial that we educate the masses on sourcing information and getting the value, to freedom of speech. We are not a free people with any level of censorship. And there's no other throughout this last year experiencing content creation on this platform. There's no other heavier censored topic other than health, regarding our health. Why are they fighting tooth and nail to control that narrative? Kind of shows evil's hand and what they're trying to enact and impact us by what means. With our technological advances, it is greatly hindering. It's a blessing in a lot of ways, but we're supporting too much. Not all of us, obviously. Thank you for supporting this platform. Thank you for coming over to Rumble. Fact of the matter is we just need more people to come to Rumble. 100%. So let's just help us do that. And then we can up our health. And then I do believe naturally we can just solve so many the issues that we're facing, the oppression we're dealing with, the taxation we're dealing with, and create a life worth living, not just for ourselves and the time we have left in this existence, but darn it, for the young folks, for children, our children. So crucial.
Not dug into it. I have not engaged in trying to answer the question you just asked me. So you asked me to speculate, so speculated. Again, whatever their motives are, they did it. And the reason that and just to, I'll wrap up the point of why they knew it was false and why it was false is that the petition only asked for the reevaluation as to children, which would have meant, even if the petition was granted, it would have made available for all adults in America, licensed, okay? Which would have meant it would have remained off-label use for all children. All right, so nobody would have been deprived in America for even that one vaccine we asked about. But putting that aside, there are 5 other licensed vaccines for children. Polio on the CDC schedule is given at 2, 4, 6 months of age and 4 years of age. And there are 5 other shots you can get at those intervals because they're given with other vaccines at those time periods. So it would have taken them 2 seconds of thinking to know their headline of the polio vaccine is going to be eliminated was absolutely a lie. Why do you think they did it?
Because I think Bobby Kennedy, because I think some of them are vaccine zealots. I think that's right. I've certainly seen a lot of that. But I also think there's something about the way he assesses facts and history that's terrifying to a certain sort of person.
Trying to demonize, discredit.
Who's a rigid, dogmatic thinker. A lot of them are. A lot of the dumber people are rigid and dogmatic, in case you haven't noticed. It's a sign of mediocrity, in my opinion, but it's very common in our professional class. And Bobby, like Trump, is the kind of person who assesses things on the basis of what he sees and doesn't necessarily genuflect before, the pieties that all of us have to, we're required to, whatever we're supposed to say. He doesn't necessarily go along with that. And that temperament is incredibly threatening. Once you start asking questions, are these products safe? You might wind up asking other questions like, why do we have NATO? Or how was
they can't have that?
John F. Kennedy murdered? Like, what was that? I mean, there's people who ask uncomfortable questions in one area are likely to ask uncomfortable questions in other areas. And if your entire system is built on lies, that's, a huge threat. Well, that's my personal view.
I'll build on that then, which is when you look at the last 40 years, who has been one of the big supporters in many ways of what's occurred, right? You don't often, a lot of times you'll see the New York Times supportive of what the HHS administration has been doing over the last 40 years. And where's that gotten us over the last 40 years? Let's think about this for a second. So under the current approach that's been going on, which Bobby stands in opposition to in many ways, right? And I'm not talking about just vaccines. I'm talking about the way business is done across health.
Exactly.
Right? I'm not talking about just vaccines right now. When you look over the last 40 years, we've already talked about child chronic health gone exploding, right? Which is, just suffering on a micro scale. Each one of these families that has a kid with a chronic health issue, it's devastating. When we have families with a vaccine-injured kid, it's a devastating event. But then there's also the macro issue too, which is we got $35 trillion in debt. We have almost $2 trillion a year that we can't cover of what we spend in this country. We're bringing in 4-point-something trillion in revenue. And just one agency, CMS, that does Medicare, Medicaid, is almost $1.7 trillion of our $6 trillion budget. And when you look at the growth curve of that agency alone, it's just skyrocketing. We are, if a few countries stop using our dollars or national reserve currency, we could be in a death spiral. I mean, this is how empires fail. And what is driving a massive component of our national debt? It's healthcare spending, and it's going to rise and it's going to increase. And really, Congress, unfortunately, has in many ways rigged the rules for Medicaid and Medicaid. So it's really hard to reduce the total spend other than getting people healthier. And that is what Bobby wants. That's all he's focused on. He has no interests that extend, in my experience with him, beyond that. He is genuinely committed to helping people and saving people. And I think you're right. He stands against what has brought us to this place. And in many ways, I guess, you're right in that if he's right, if there are a whole host of things that our health agencies have been doing or ignoring or not properly studying, and I'm talking about everything right now.
Like, what are we doing? Why are we allowing such corrupt organizations to demonize our heroes, essentially? Do I idolize that man? No. But I have respect, and he's going to war on behalf of all of us, our function, our lives, the quality of life, our loved ones, children. It's crucial. Are we that sick to even effectively see those who are willing to fight on behalf of, you name it, any aspect to this life? Whether it's our freedoms, freedom of speech, our health is crucial. Once again, very alarming. The most censored topic I've experienced since kicking off this podcast to date. What does that tell us? So it's time to not support, obviously, others that don't share the same morals and values as we the people. And we the people start backing those that do.
It would show that the New York Times and all of these papers have not been doing their job.
It was 5 years ago this month.
Not
that people
doing their
started to
job
drop dead in
at
the Southern
all.
Chinese. How did it call Jennifer? He made the claim that.
Freaking.
So just to kind of tie bow in the New York Times story element of this conversation, they made the claim that you and Bobby Kennedy are pro polio. What other claims do they make?
They also said we were trying to get rid of Hep B vaccines. And then they pointed to yet another petition that I could talk about. Because, again, the petition we filed with regards to Hep B vaccines, and again, only with regards to 2 of them. There are others. Okay. So there were not about all Hep B vaccines. And again, it was filed on behalf of our client, ICANN, not on behalf of Mr. Kennedy. He knew nothing about it. He had nothing to do with it. Right. So the association with him is totally false. And it would have left Americans without access to Hep B vaccines. So that was false, too. What did the petition actually ask for? Well, let me tell you, because that's what should have been the headline. The headline should have been the following in the New York Times. FDA licenses Hep B vaccines for infants and toddlers based on clinical trial with 5 days or less of safety monitoring after injection and no control group. That should have been the headline.
Wow.
That is patently insufficient to determine safety.
Right.
And I think anybody that reads the petition that was filed with the FDA would find it eminently reasonable, because it doesn't just say you did this. It starts with, in 2017, we said to you, how could you do this? You didn't really do this. Give us documents. And then they gave us an answer, and then they didn't provide anything of substance. Then we did it again on behalf of ICANN, and we FOIA'd them. Then we sued them. And on behalf of ICANN, we did this for years. And then we finally brought the petition. Again, saying, come on, you got to require proper clinical trial. Again, these were 2 vaccines that also came online during that period between 1986 and now that were part of the explosion of chronic health condition. Let's make sure they're really safe, and the way to do that is a proper clinical trial.
And they don't have that.
The New York Times also accused us of wanting to get rid of a bunch of other vaccines, okay? Because there was a 3rd petition that was filed with the FDA, again, after a lot of back and forth. And that petition, I think most people, again, would find eminently reasonable. That petition was based on a peer-reviewed study that came out by the world's leading aluminum expert and 4 of his colleagues. And what did this paper find in this peer-reviewed journal? It found that amongst 10 childhood vaccines, there was far more aluminum adjuvant in the vial, or far less in the vial, than what was on the FDA label for those vaccines. So you got a label, the FDA-approved label.
Wow.
It says it's got 0.5, let's say, micrograms, but the finding was that it had double maybe inside of it.
What?
That's a serious concern.
Yeah.
Aluminum adjuvants are neuro and cytotoxic. They're what you use to induce autoimmunity in lab animals. Okay. They're not like candy. You know, if I just injected you with just dead pieces of proteins, right, from a pertussis bacteria, your body would probably, macrophages and dendritic cells would probably just gobble it up and throw it away as garbage, because to have a real immune reaction, you have to have cellular death. Okay. You have to have cellular death. And how do bacteria cause cellular death? They're replicating, they're killing cells. Viruses are taking over cells. But if you have just dead pieces of protein in the vial, it's not going to do much. So they include aluminum adjuvants. Aluminum is bound to silica acid in the ground. Humans did not come into contact ever with aluminum throughout all human history, for the most part, until not long ago in the scale of human history, we started mining it and separating the silica acid. Most metals that you come into contact with in the environment have a human function, like iron, right? Magnesium. Your body has some mechanism it uses it for. Aluminum has no biological function in your body, 0. That's why when you have an aluminum can, you know how it can survive forever and bacteria and viruses don't grow? Because it's toxic to life. Okay. People think of aluminum as if it's ubiquitous, because it's now ubiquitous in our, but
like a super clean material.
But so aluminum adjuvant having too much or too little is problematic.
Not in our bodies on a cellular level. Now, I'm really excited. I'm sorry for interrupting as much as I am, but I just want us to absorb the power of a conversation like this. I do believe that barrier that we spoke about earlier, the stonewalling, with the core beliefs, the indoctrination for generations now, just being spoon-fed all this it's truly misinformation, because he's proving it. A lawyer and a law firm that's backing that man is bringing the data, showing the lawsuits even. So we could do our own deep dive as to what they've found regarding all these shots, pharmaceuticals even. So this is a unique conversation in a way, and the way they're going about it, just bantering or sharing information, I do believe is, I mean, some people will just tune out as soon as they hear Vax. They don't, they just want to keep that core belief for whatever reason, whether it's even to their detriment, not do any of the research. But to bring up the data like they have, couldn't this possibly be an effective interaction between two amazing men that is absorbable, clear enough, precise enough to be like, wow, if that's true, then none of the doctor's claims are real. None of everything fed down all the way from pharmaceutical and then leapfrogging over to the government institutions or school programs. See, it even does go beyond the immunity they received. And then the why is to recap, I suppose. They got the immunity because they were going out of business. Because all of the lawsuits, the pharmaceuticals were on all the vaccines, all of them. So they were going out of business, and they lobbied and petitioned our government to achieve that immunity, which just led them down the path, just completely flipped the industry on its head, that they're no longer providing real data or helpful things to us with this immunity. Why do they need to? How is that beneficial for them? It's not to their benefit to create health and wellness. So it's just, what other industry has achieved that? None. Only them. And it's not even the whole industry. It's not all pharmaceutical drugs. It's explicitly the childhood vaccine schedule. Among what? Flu shots, all vaccines. So we should have allowed those to fail. So the only vaccine companies that would be in existence today are actually providing safety. Because, like his example, if an airline and the planes just keep dropping out of the sky to the detriment of the people that travel on that airline, well, that airline should fail, because look at the statistics of the ones that are flying now. It's safer than driving your car to the dang airport. But if you gave them that level of immunity, well, why wouldn't they chillax on maintenance or buy cheaper aircraft or manufacture it with less resilient products? Let's bring up that image again. Well, I guess it's the image of today's episode. Why is it not opening? There it is. Let's make vaccine makers liable again. At a bare minimum. At the point we made them liable, then they'd only stay in existence by creating beneficial product. If we can't get back to that, then this continuum of deteriorated health is only going to continue. Like, full stop. That totally shifted the direction once they achieved that immunity. And it's been nothing but downhill to our detriment since.
And the aluminum that you ingest is usually in ionic form. Like in the periodic table of elements, it's like tiny piece of aluminum. So if this cup was an ion of aluminum that you ingested, which, wouldn't cross the blood-brain barrier, which your body could, use its pathways to get rid of, a piece of aluminum adjuvant would be like the size of this whole city we're sitting in. Okay. On the micro scale, it's massive. So it gets injected into your arm with the vaccine. It's in the vial to cause cellular death at the injection site. Okay.
Terrible.
So that your your blood neutrophils come pouring out, and you have that inflammation that you see when you have an infection. It gets red, and that's your immune system working. And those aluminum adjuvants are bound to the antigens. So when your macrophages and dendritic cells, those are immune system cells, take them and go to your lymph nodes to create antibodies, adaptive immunity, right? After they're done doing that, where does the aluminum adjuvant go? Well, let me tell you. The CDC and others have done studies where they inject aluminum adjuvant into animals and then they sacrifice them. They mark the aluminum adjuvant with like a fluorescence so they could see where is it afterwards, and they can, shine it on the animal. It ends up in all their organs, their brain, their lungs, their heart, everywhere. So that's not good. Having that kind of material deposited is not good. So you don't want too much of it in a vial, okay? I'm not saying what kind of harm. I'm just saying you don't want too much. And you don't want too little because that presents efficacy issues.
Right.
And even safety issues. So the petition, all it asked for, and those might have been too much detail about aluminum, but the petition, all it asked for is said, hey, FDA, and if you read it, the ask was this: please provide documents that confirm that the amount of aluminum adjuvant in the vial of these 10 childhood vaccines matches what's on the product label. And if you can't, and you don't have that documentation, and you can't show, then pause distribution until you do. Because that's a serious safety issue and efficacy issue. If you're giving kids vaccines that might have safety concerns, like a shot in the dark in many ways, and also may not even be efficacious, may not even produce the immunity you're looking for. That petition was filed years and years and years ago, and still they have not confirmed it one way or another. Again.
What? How is that acceptable?
The point of these petitions was not to actually stop the distribution of these vaccines. ICANN didn't want to do that. It just wanted them to do proper safety studies. That's really it. The legal mechanism was to say, pause it so that they then would require.
How is that too much to ask? Yeah, pause it and then obtain that data. How are we not up in arms demanding that now, knowing? We could reach out to this law firm, achieve all their documents. I'm sure they would share that with the masses to support the lawsuits, everything they're already engaged in. Why are we not supporting this battle to our benefit? There's so much to get engaged in. Our health is everything. At a minimum, let's at least get people proper consent with now this information, the consent that the doctors in the corrupt medical industrial complex is not providing.
Require the science. Otherwise, there's no legal mechanism to get the FDA to do the things it should have been doing. And I would like to think we could all agree that, when you go to the store and you get a box of Captain Crunch cereal and you read the ingredients, what's on the ingredients should match what's in the box.
That's important.
Right. And in the case of the third petition, it wasn't just that you showed the safety testing was inadequate. There was evidence of an actual problem. The ingredients didn't match the label.
Absolutely.
Right.
Wow.
By the world's leading aluminum
huge.
scientists. That's right. So, but the headline wasn't FDA shirks its duties to assure product safety. FDA, no, it was, by implication, Mr. Kennedy wants to ban vaccines, which is complete and utter nonsense.
So the purpose of this piece was obviously not to report the news or tell the truth or, get to the heart of anything. It was to stop Kennedy's nomination at the confirmation stage. Has it been effective?
That is why I'm on your show to make sure everybody understands that the New York Times deceived this entire country about what's in those petitions. It deceived the country about their connection to Mr. Kennedy. It's nothing to do with him. And I do not think, thankfully, because of folks who are willing to actually cover the truth. And thank goodness there is media that's willing to cover the truth about this. I don't think it will hurt him. But if we were 15 years ago and there was no alternative media,
That's
as
right.
it's called,
That's right.
and the New York Times ran the story and everybody else picked it up, who would I talk to tell the truth? Who could I go on? Who would I be speaking with? I'd be in my office just talking to the wall. So I'm very thankful that there are those, and I'm thankful to the alternative media that's hosted me, as well as others, who have hosted me. Fox put me on to talk about this. Chris Cuomo had me on, to his credit, to talk about this on News Nation. And the Wall Street Journal just published an op-ed. To their credit, their rivals in the New York Times, I don't know. So maybe that helped, as my understanding. So, and it was an op-ed. It wasn't a piece, but fine. So my hope is that, no, I don't think it's going to hurt him, because I like to hope and think the senators will look at the actual facts at the end of the day on this, and they'll realize this it just wasn't true, what was in this article. There's just no truth. There's just no truth to the claim that he wants to get rid of vaccines. He just wants transparency, and he wants good science, and we should all want that.
I want to ask a specific question that's bothered me for a long time. So 1986, Congress grants blanket immunity to the vaccine manufacturers. They cannot be sued. Those are not the only products people sue over, of course. The trial bar, which was, famously the most powerful, along with teachers union, is the most powerful single constituency in the Democratic Party because it gave them the most money. They've lobbied to make it easy to sue over anything. OBGYNs go out of business because, they get sued. why haven't they complained about this?
It's a great question. I mean that. I just think that there's there aren't many plaintiffs firms that have made a line of business in it. So it's not like they had this line of cases in business suing on vaccine injuries, and now you've taken it away. I mean, there were a few doing it obviously back in the early 80s, but I think you're talking about like in the decades since. Why hasn't the trial bar done this? Maybe it's a blend of ideology, and it's also none of the big plaintiffs side firms have a vaccine injury practice. And the ones that do have gotten used to maybe the existing system.
But it's just weird. I mean, sue over talcum powder, asbestos, tobacco, slip and falls. I mean, you name it. Playground equipment manufacturers, the rest of the medical establishment gets sued constantly. But nobody thinks, well, wait, everyone knows there are a lot of vaccine injuries. That's not a controversial point. It's known. And no lawyer thought, well, wait a second, we need to lobby to change this law because we could save people and make a ton of money. I just think it's very strange.
You asked me a lot of questions.
It's $1 trillion industry. They're clearly the ones, how they're not lobbying, because everyone that's gaining a position of power, either on a state level, a federal level, look at their bank accounts. They go in, most of them, with just regular bank accounts like you and I, serve a little stint, bleep in time, come out multi-millionaires. Are we connecting the dots? It's clear. So much deceit. So many lies. I've had enough. How about you?
Questions that are complex and require a lot of speculation, but maybe part of it is that you said the trial bar has a lot of lobbyists, right, and influence, but
yeah, they do.
But pharma and health, the healthcare industry has, my understanding, over 2,000 lobbyists. My understanding is they have the most lobbyists of any industry out there. Double is my understanding in terms of dollars. If I'm don't quote me on this one, but you should look it up. I think last I heard, and this should be verified, double the next in line, which I thought was like oil and gas industry. So I don't know where trial lawyers stand in that thing, but I suspect those who would benefit from keeping that immunity probably have far more influence, and that's probably why it stays in place.
It's just very strange because, all of us, thanks to propaganda from organized lawyer lobbies, have been told from birth that, the civil law keeps us safe. If you make a crappy product, as you said, if your gas tank blows up, some lawyer's going to sue the car manufacturer and you're going to save your car.
That is how product safety works.
Boom.
When you look at countries that don't have, basically market-based systems, how do their products get safer? They didn't.
They don't.
Go look back at other countries. In that way. The way that products get safer is the company's economic interest, which is a good thing, meaning their economic interest aligns with safety. I make a car, I make a drug.
Bingo.
I want to make sure that it's as safe as I can make it so that I can still make money when I sell it and not face exposure downstream that will make me end up with a loss.
Well, I'm glad you said drug too, because this immunity applies only to vaccines. There are lots of drugs.
But yet people are still religious about this, and nope, vaccines, good. Any questions or doubt, bad. We gotta fix that. Help us fix that. Help us get this message out.
That's right.
There. Some of them have, all of them have side effects. Some of the side effects are scary as hell, but they're still on the market.
And they're given to only very small groups of people. So you have drugs given to small groups of people, like you said, can cause side effects, and they can survive. But a product that you give to millions, often by coercion, by school mandates, every single year, promoted by the federal government, you can't make a profit on. You don't have to pay a marketing budget because the government does it for you. You don't have to worry about selling it, promoting it, because they're mandating it to go to school.
Wow.
Millions have to take it. You're raking in billions a year, and you still can't turn a profit without the immunity. I mean, it's a very troubling reality. It's part of the reason that drove that petition. I'm going to put this into...
How profitable, but just to clear up something you said, how profitable are vaccines?
The vaccine industry profits to the tune of billions of dollars a year.
So it is a legitimate profit center for the pharma companies.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my goodness. And since the early 80s, it is becoming an increasingly large percentage of their portfolio, in particular for Sanofi, Merck, GlaxoSmithKline, and Pfizer. Those four in particular make most of the childhood vaccines and vaccines in America, and their percentage of portfolio has been increasing. Because imagine I came to you and I said, hey, Tucker, I got a business idea for you. Okay, you ready? You want to hear it? Listen, what we're going to do. We're going to put out this product, okay? Like, what is it? Don't worry about it. But we inject it into people. Well, why would people take it? Well, the government's going to mandate it. Oh, okay, great. Well, is it safe? Don't worry about it. Because they're going to give us immunity. Well, I mean, what if people start attacking us in the media? Don't worry. The federal government's also going to promote it for us, as well as all 50 health agencies. You'd be like, well, let me get this straight. Guaranteed market, immunity to liability. It's a no-brainer. So obviously, yes, vaccines have increased.
Why did the 86 law passed as a public service in the name of public health? Why did it allow vaccine manufacturers to profit? So, right, you get an immunity shield, but you're not allowed to get rich off it. That seems fair.
Well, what they did is that they left the financial incentive to make more vaccines, but they didn't leave the financial incentive that makes them make more vaccines that are safe.
Exactly.
So what they did is they took away the one true way you assure product safety. And to be clear,
right,
there is no other product on the market that's like this. And let me draw this into sharp contrast for you, okay? Pfizer, according to Money Inc.'s top 5 selling drugs, okay? When you look at that list.
We literally could end the episode right there. That told us everything we needed to know very simply. Absorbable. That should be enough. That little clip, I made a note. That's a reel right there. Try to create one. Hopefully get it out there. But yet again, this topic is heavily censored. That very clip, I see it already. I'll get a strike on TikTok, no doubt. YouTube is heavily censoring this. Facebook is heavily, and also Instagram. I'd imagine I could screech that reel by Facebook and Instagram, but not TikTok, possibly YouTube. That should just highlight the importance that we get more people valuing their freedoms, pull them out of the illusion of being free with those tyrannical platforms, and support companies, individuals, and everyone that's utilizing those platforms by getting on Rumble, True Social, X to an extent. I still keep seeing alarming things about Elon. I want to like him. I just don't know. So diversify. Get on a lot of different free speech platforms. But we're not grasping that fast enough. And the quicker we support those that share the same morals and values and freedoms and everything we desire in this life, the quicker it's going to come to fruition. The more we procrastinate and support. I mean, I would love to just cancel off all of them. I'm trying to steal, just put snippets, breadcrumbs, whatever it freaking takes to get people off those tyrannical platforms. So I'm trying to utilize them to the benefit to get people onto the free speech. But this very episode can't be fully even uploaded to YouTube. Otherwise, the ability of dropping breadcrumbs there will be gone. But we push the envelope and we're at that borderline, so I got to let more time surpass before we push the envelope yet again. Otherwise, it will lead to completely being gone, and then we can't. So help us. And just communicating. It blows my mind that so many individuals that do spend time on social media, because I can't really blame those that aren't on anything, but there's a lot of people that are on Facebook and all these things. They say they don't have a presence, but I see their activity, yet they don't even know about Rumble. So we all have a role to play here, and I hope that one, just discussing, having people download it. It's the new YouTube. It's very easy interface. They're working out all the bugs as we speak. It's amazing, and it's getting more and more seamless every day.
4 of them are drugs, one's a vaccine. This not including COVID vaccine, okay? Enbrel, Eliquis, and so forth. If you go to the FDA website, everybody should do this, and I actually have a chart on this on my Twitter feed, okay? And you can see what was the clinical trial relied upon to license those 4 drugs, right? The top 5 selling Pfizer products. Most of those clinical trials relied upon to license products were multi-year placebo-controlled trials. Why would Pfizer do that? Why would Pfizer do that with those products? But when you look at vaccine products, and again, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm telling you, it's right there on the FDA website. Most childhood vaccines are licensed based on days or weeks of safety review after injection.
Days or weeks.
Virtually never a placebo control group.
Virtually
ever,
never.
Or sometimes no control, or a control that makes no sense. And often underpowered, meaning you don't have enough kids in it to really assess if there's even an issue.
RFK tried getting that from Fauci, from the NIH, from the CDC. They even followed suit with lawsuits, and after years, they still couldn't provide not a single peer-reviewed study out of any of the childhood vaccine schedule. They simply responded, we just don't have that information. Think about that. Really think about that. The only data, the most crucial data we need, they couldn't provide on any of it. See, that's the problem with immunity. this level of corrupt mafia-esque business. Frick, I believe the mafia had better ethics than this. This is tyrannical, is evil, as it can get. No wonder the stats on our health, life expectancy, birth rates is all down the tubes. No wonder we're allowing taxation like we are. No wonder we're allowing an invasion. No wonder we're allowing a diaper-wearing freaking pedophile in the White House that isn't even cognitively there. I have my cognitive issues. I believe I could run circles around that old geezer. Are you kidding me? And yet we're allowing him to finish his term when he had to withdraw because of his cognitive decline into a further election. Unbelievable. So we could sit here and point the finger. All these issues out there, mega issues and mandating, and it's perpetuating the issue with our children. We're not allowing their brains and their bodies to grow and be as resilient as we need them to now be to basically inhabit the world we're handing off to them. We can sit here and point the finger all we want, but the only real direction that matters is in front of a mirror. Like, what is wrong with us and just simply accepting all this oppression, tyranny, and poisoning? It's a poisoning. Think about it. Even the side effects that they put on these so-called vaccines, and I say so-called because they really haven't provided the proof we need to even call them that, at least by the definition we were raised to believe a vaccine is. They don't meet that. So-called vaccine, let's just continue to rip down the curtain. Let's expose everything going on behind the scenes.
So why would Pfizer have a multi-year placebo-controlled trial for its drugs, but all these vaccines are put out with just ridiculous, like this polio vaccine we talked about, okay? It's because Pfizer wants to know whether or not those drugs are going to cause harm after they're licensed. Because if it does, they're on the hook. They don't want to end up upside down financially. They don't want to lose money on those drugs. So before it goes on the market, they make sure they want those trials. You asked me before about the FDA, forget the FDA. That's what economic interest does. It conforms the conduct of the company to assure safety, and that's a great thing. That's part of why our market system works well with regards to product safety. People talk about the lawsuits. Yeah, the lawsuits are there, but it's not the lawsuits that make them safe. It's the fact that they want to make money, and most of safety happens before the lawsuit. It happens before the product even goes to market. The company cares, they test it, they evaluate it. They don't want to face the liability and be upside down. But when it comes to vaccines, they don't have that interest. When you look at most lawsuits that big companies...
All this only happens when we get rid of and abolish their immunity status. Like, what the frick? No. How are companies that are making injectables directly going into people's arms, directly, 100%, undisputably, negatively impacting people's health and leading to deaths? It's proven on pretty much every product they have provided up to this point. How are we allowing that? Pinch me, man. The world we live in, unbelievable.
Face, the board members face, the officers face, oftentimes because they cause a financial loss, right? You ever hear of a lawsuit, a securities class action because a company was immoral, was unethical? No, it's because they lost money. It's because they didn't do things to maximize money in many ways. And so that's what conforms, that's what drives corporate conduct, it drives the companies to make decisions about what they're going to do. And you have a company that's making a product. When they make the drug, their fiduciary duty to their shareholders is to make sure they test that properly. But their fiduciary duty to their shareholders when it comes to vaccines is to test them as little as possible. Because if they do test them and they find a problem, then they can't make money from it. They might not get to market. They would actually be kind of, in some ways, forget ethics and morality. They would in many ways violate their fiduciary duty to their shareholders to test the vaccine too much.
If they know too much.
If they know too much, then it won't get licensed. It's a perversion of it. And then after, so not only did they gut the economic interest, there is one other way you assure product safety. It's a far weaker way. It's not very good, but it's there, and that's regulators. And they have a role to play. But the regulators here are completely conflicted because HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, is the department of the federal government in which you have the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, all of the health agencies, okay? And it is responsible for promoting vaccines. So it's responsible for the safety of vaccines and promoting vaccines. Those are in conflict. For example,
you think?
For example, the Department of Transportation is responsible for promoting transportation. So they go to the airlines and they say, hey, make more planes, get more planes in the sky, have more airports, and so forth. But who's responsible for safety if there's a crash? The NTSB, a completely different agency. You separate them. It's hard for me to shake your hand with industry. I'm the government. I say, hey, make more planes. And at the same time, slap you and say, hey, you're out of... It's hard to do the same role. So you separate. Or the Department of Energy is responsible for promoting nuclear power in America. But there's an atomic energy, the Nuclear Regulatory Agency, excuse me. Yeah, thank you. Is responsible for the safety of nuclear power plants. They completely separate those functions with vaccines. They're not separated. And additionally, not only do they not separate those absolutely diametrically opposed duties, you cannot have the same department responsible for both. One will win out. More than that, remember what I told you earlier. The 1986 Act that I referenced did create a very narrow path for some compensation if you're vaccine injured. But you sue the Department of Health and Human Services, the secretary. You are suing the very same federal health department that is responsible for safety. So if, and they're represented by a little law firm called the Department of Justice. You might have heard of them, okay? So you're fighting against the Department of Justice in this program where there's no discovery. Let's put that aside. The important point is this. It is the only product that I know of where the government defends the product and the industry and the companies against the consumer and the citizens. And that creates an incredible conflict. So if they do any study, Tucker, think about it. If they do a study that shows this vaccine causes asthma or causes an increase in some serious issue, what are the few lawyers that engage with vaccine injury in this program going to do? As an admission against interest. They're going to use those studies, those science, to get liability against who? The federal government for those vaccine injuries. It's an incredible conflict.
If I bring suit against the Secretary of HHS on behalf of someone who's vaccine injured and I win, where does the money come from?
So there's a tax. 75 cents is paid for every vaccine dose, and that goes into a fund. That fund has about $3 billion right now. It's paid out I think over $4 billion to date, with a cap of $250,000 in pain and suffering, and a cap of $250,000 for death claims. And so it comes out of that. It's called the Vaccine Injury.
So the manufacturers are not on the hook.
They still are not on the hook for it. No.
So the system's even more grotesque than you described. There's a product made by a publicly traded company, a private company, non-government. The government requires its citizens to buy the product.
So good.
The manufacturer of the product cannot be sued if the product is faulty. And if someone's injured, they have to fight the government to get paid. And when they do get paid, the manufacturer doesn't have to pay.
Right. And I'll add to it in that when you sue the government, it's not like you get an Article 3 judge, Article 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution. Article 3 created the judiciary. There are judges that are, that are nominated and confirmed by the Senate. You don't get an Article 3 judge. You get something called a special master in this program, which is, I will submit, is in many ways policy driven. So there are things that will compensate. There are things they don't want to compensate dead babies, as basically almost on a policy basis. Okay, there are things.
Why?
People won't vaccinate.
Come on.
I mean, ideology around these products is very strong.
Wow.
I don't joke about. I mean, people are very ideological around this product. They believe without vaccines, everyone will die. I mean, that's the typical retort. Oh, you want a proper clinical trial? Everyone will die and get polio. Oh, you filed a petition on a novel polio vaccine from 1990, and that would have left nobody without a polio vaccine, even if granted, that just asked for a proper clinical trial. Oh, you want everybody to get polio and die. I mean, this is you just saw it happen.
But
it's your own eyes.
You could be for vaccines.
So
sure I am, but you could be. Many people are. I always have been. And still demand good vaccines. I'm for cars. I think it's fair to expect they're not going to blow up. It doesn't even make sense.
I don't understand what that means, by the way, to be for or against vaccines or pro or anti-vaccines. I mean, I'm not for or against cars. I'm not pro or anti-cars. Cars have a purpose. They have a function. Sometimes I want to use them, sometimes I don't. If you want to park it in my bedroom, I don't want it to. I mean, it's just a product. And this is the problem. This is what I'm talking about, is that they're just a product. They're a product. They were not given to Moses at Sinai. They're a product made by companies. And the problem is that people just can't talk about them objectively.
Why?
It's a problem. And it feeds into, so you said, I think that this program in the federal government, they also are part and parcel of the overall objective. Let me put it this way. Agencies set policy. The CDC is not a science organization. It's a political organization.
Right.
What do political organizations do? They set policies and then they subscribe and they follow them.
Exactly.
Okay, so the CDC, for example, I'll give you a great example. There's something called the MMWR. It's what they call their scientific publication. It's what I call their newsletter, okay? And they publish studies in it, all right? And those studies are often used to then set CDC policy. But here's the thing. They don't go through a peer review process. They go through something called, this is all on the CDC website, a clearance process within CDC. And one of those steps is that the study must align with the CDC policy.
Come on.
I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
How's that science?
It's not science. It's the perversion of science.
Right.
I've written about this. I've substacked about it. I've tweeted about it. But I don't have your platform. But it's the perversion of science. I mean, but that is the reality of the MMWR. And I'll give you an example of how this plays out in the lives of everyday Americans. Do you remember at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic when the vaccines first came out, the COVID-19 vaccines, and the CDC came out with all this guidance about how natural immunity is useless? It's worthless. You got to get the vaccine no matter what.
They lied.
And so their guidance to the public and the states around this country, luckily not all of them, followed it. And they said, okay, if you've been vaccinated, you're allowed to have your civil and individual rights. You've had COVID, you're not allowed to have your civil and individual rights. How did they get to that conclusion? There were, at that point, numerous peer-reviewed studies around the world with millions of people in them that showed natural immunity was more protective than vaccine immunity. Mm-hmm. But what did the CDC do? They went and they did this 300-person, basically case-controlled, retrospective nonsense of a study. We could do a whole show on that one study. We could pull it up and you and I could sit here and we could read it and you could spend your all day reading it. And I promise you would never understand the study design because it is the most convoluted nonsense to achieve the result they wanted. But it achieved the result they wanted. If that study, which showed what they wanted it to show regarding natural immunity versus vaccine immunity, they relied on that one study in the MMWR. I shouldn't even call it a study, in their newsletter, to deprive people with natural immunity of their civil and individual rights, ignoring all the other science. So yes, it is the perversion of science, but it has real life consequences. And I just gave you a real life example of it. On behalf of ICANN, by the way, and others, I actually wrote the CDC, my firm wrote the CDC a letter. We put all these studies, and I could provide these, you can make these available. They're such great letters. I wish everybody in America read them. We laid out all the science, all of them showing natural immunity is at least as efficacious as vaccine immunity. Can you please give these people their rights, civil individual rights, freedom? Yeah. They wrote back with that one study that I just told you about. We wrote back another letter saying, this study is total garbage. We explained why it's garbage. As I told you, one of the things that I do is I depose vaccinologists. And it's part of what I do, and infectious disease doctors and immunologists. So I have to learn epidemiology, statistics, vaccinology, immunology. That's part of what deposing experts requires you to do. Okay. Wow. I don't have any degrees, but I have to learn this stuff. And I can tell you that study design, it categorically is designed to reach the conclusion that they wanted. And because it's a clearance process I described, if something had shown a different result, it just wouldn't have made it through. So yes, it is the perversion of science. Going all the way back to your actual question now, CDC is a policy entity, HHS is a policy entity, and to your point, why wouldn't the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program compensate? Now, finally gonna answer your question. That was a long road to get there. Because it's a policy organization. And yeah, of course, what the policy of that organization is, vaccines are safe and effective. That's a mantra. I don't know what that means entirely, by the way, but they say it all day long. And anything that shows they're unsafe will get people to not vaccinate, and that goes against their policy. So absolutely,
this is too crazy. How did you get involved in this area? You graduate law school. You went to Berkeley.
I went to Berkeley for law school. Yes.
And what did you plan on doing when you graduated? How did you wind up here?
Well, after law school, I clerked for the chief judge of the Supreme Court of Israel for a year after law school. And after that, I worked for Latham & Watkins, which is one of the biggest firms in the world, for 6 years. Doing bet the company litigation, right? Multi-billion-dollar disputes. And then I left there and started my own practice. I wasn't home enough. I wanted to see my kids more and my wife more. So my own practice. And I continued to do commercial litigation, actually. That's what I kept doing. But instead of doing multi-billion-dollar cases, we would do, a few $1 million or a few $100 million cases. There are some cases, for example, that, Latham would have, or a big firm would have, and they're doing a giant bankruptcy, and they can't do a litigation, right? They can't do the litigation because it conflicts with the bankruptcy, but they don't want a different big firm to do that litigation, right? Because they might steal a client. So I would get some of those cases that would kick off to our firm because they trusted us to do good work. So we would do some of those, cases for behalf of publicly traded and large corporations. So I did that for a few years. And then in terms of legally how I got involved, there was a law in California passed. The bill number was called SB 277 in 2014. And what it did was eliminate non-medical exemptions for children to attend school. Okay. So all these kids, tens of thousands of children, were thrown out of school in California because their parents made the medical decision. And like I said before, these are often the folks who I find are most informed about these products.
Most informed. So they made an educated decision.
Sometimes more informed than many of the pediatricians I depose about these products.
Wow.
And I was in New York at the time, and
Who pushed that proposition?
Senator Richard Pan, who's no longer there, and a senator, and a senator, Richard Pan.
Clearly someone in a position, let's just guess, no, we could actually look into it, that left that position with a boatload of unexplainable money. We need to put proper checks and balances to these positions. They're public servants. They're servants. We need to have them under a microscope because they're no longer addressing the grievances of we the people, have we the people's best interest at heart. It's become a self-serving role in this country. And it's a big problem, a big part of the problem.
And Ben Allen were the two members of the California legislature who drove that bill through. I mean, if you look back and see...
Did Pharma back it? Hard to know.
I mean, it's... but it happened. And so they started... Some schools...
Not as a lawyer, off air, I would love to hear his answer.
New York started kicking kids out of school, just kind of...
In California?
In New York, actually, even though they didn't need to. I was in New York at the time, so I brought some suits to help those kids get back to school so they can get back in. I got injunctions and got them back into typically private schools that were you decided they don't want to have any of the kids who had religious exemptions.
Wow.
New York State allowed religious exemptions at the time. And then here's the fateful moment. The city of New York required a flu shot for preschoolers.
Right.
And so my wife was also an attorney.
Required, fully cornering a market. So it is like mandated. It's now basically become law that we don't even have our body autonomy and choice or agency at all. That right there, my friends, that is of the devil. That is evil. That is pure evil. Unbelievable.
Attorney and partner at our firm, said, hey, can we challenge that? And I looked at it and I said, and after looking at it saying, yeah, we could, because it was not passed by the legislature, it was passed by the Department of Health. They don't have the authority to do it. So we could just challenge it on separation of power grounds.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, great, do it. And I said, whoa, wait a second. I said, we have clients who are public traded companies. I said, if we prevail and we strike this down, you understand this will make headlines. I do not think our clients would like that. And she's, I won't use the word she used because I don't know if it's appropriate for the show, but she basically said, bring the suit. And that was the end of the discussion. And I did.
Good for her.
Absolutely.
Yes.
My wife's incredible. She is the North Star to, what is right and good.
You have to have that if you're going to do a job like yours.
Yeah. She does not compromise on what's right for anything.
Love it.
And so I did. I got it. I did win in the trial court level. I got the injunction. It made national news, and as expected, and so
as expected. What happened?
As expected, our commercial lit practice contracted.
Really?
Absolutely.
People didn't want your services as a lawyer because you had challenged a flu vaccine mandate.
It just doesn't accord, I think, with what big Fortune 500 companies would.
Wow.
I don't think it fits well into their portfolio of lawyers that they would use for what they do.
Well, you're very diplomatic because that's grotesque.
Yeah, I'm not accusing all of them. I'm just.
Lawyers at big firms defend pro bono, death row inmates who have, murdered people, raped children. And that's fine. You know what I mean? But you can't defend the rights of parents to educate their children. It's crazy.
There is a very strong ideology around these products. Again, I stress their products. And so we started doing more of that work. And there's a lot more to that story, but I don't know if it's, I don't know, it's, it
so
goes on forever.
How did your views, so you didn't expect your life to take this turn, it sounds like.
We'll tell you that, no. If you asked me 10 years ago, I'd be doing this, that the New York Times run a headline that I want to, basically take away the polio vaccine, give everybody polio again. And, and senators would say, fire that lawyer, Mr. Kennedy. No, I would not expect to be in the spot, nor did I expect to ever do vaccine work. But
did you have views on the subject?
When I was in law school? No.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't know the first thing about a vaccine. And I will tell you, the very first time I ever looked at this topic, and a long time ago, I was sent some material. I was actually still Latham & Watkins at the time, and like I said, a lot of it was medical. And I didn't know anything about immunology or vaccinology or infection. I didn't know any of this medical stuff. No idea what I was reading. But then I read about the National Childhood Injury Act of 1986, and I was like, I remember I just was like, what? Because I don't understand medicine. I didn't understand that stuff. But, I understood corporate conduct. And I understood fiduciary duties. I understood conflicts of interest. I understood what drove corporations. I represented them in really important, critical litigation. I understood those things very well. And I remember it was like late at night in my office.
Are they getting away with this?
I remember being up there in the Lipstick Building and in Manhattan. And I was dumbfounded when I saw that law. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I just didn't understand it. Because I remember thinking this is the product they tell you is perfectly safe. And it's given to babies, and you can't sue the manufacturers for injury. I found that to be immediately troubling. And
so you didn't know that?
No, I did not know that until I read. I didn't know that until I read it.
I think a lot of people don't know that.
I can tell you they don't know that because obviously because of the work I do. I meet people all the time in this area, and they don't know that. And sadly, they don't know it till they do know it, and often they know it after they have some kind of personal experience. And most of the folks around the country who do know it are the folks who have been negatively impacted by these products in one way or another. They know it. They know about the law. They know about the science. They know about these things because when your kid's impacted or you're impacted by a product, you research it.
Yeah.
You know about it. And until you don't, you don't.
And what's sad, that's where we can more so take our roles in showing up out of love for our neighbors, our family members, our communities, the world as we know it, and fulfill our duty in sharing this information. It's just crucial. And we could help avoid people learning, as we say in these times, learning the hard way. It's great to learn the hard way on riding a bike. Most people end up walking away from that. Getting the proper balance, right? Scrape knees. But these vaccine injuries, if you're even given the opportunity to learn anything for that individual, because there's a lot of death, are greatly challenged. A lot of them for the rest of their lives. Let's help save lives and save the quality of life for those to not even have to be dealt that hand. It's just horrific.
And I'll say one other thing about that, just because I know a lot of people always say to me, like, well, if there were vaccines caused a lot of injury or they cause injury, I would know it. And I always say to them, do you know which drugs cause which injuries? Of course you don't. Even though they come off the market all the time.
Great point.
Vaccines won't because you can't sue manufacturers. But drugs do. And do you know which drugs are coming off the market? Do you know what injuries are causing? No. Why would you know?
That's right.
Why would you know? Why would you know that vaccines cause injury? Why do people, it's always funny to me, people assume that I would know. You wouldn't know. You know who would know? I'll tell you who would know.
Good point.
It's the firms that accumulate cases for people who are injured. You know who knows that a particular drug is going to, is causing harm first? It is the plaintiff's lawyers. You know, and there's a lot of things.
And now you understand his path right there. He didn't know anything about vaccines. He didn't want to do anything about any of this. Never saw that he would be in the position he's in. I applaud him for taking this path. There were easier paths to take as a lawyer. 100%. You could see he was even ostracized in a way by taking certain cases where other big firms or individuals, big corporations would stay away because they couldn't be connected, even though that had nothing to do with the case they were going to present. Didn't even want that association. Unbelievable.
Things you can say about plaintiff's lawyers. But the one thing that is that they know because they're getting phone calls. Hey, I took this drug.
Exactly.
And they get another call. And they get another. And they're like, oh, a pattern emergence. They're the ones who typically know it. And they start accumulating the cases. Just like, you know, we've got, for vaccines, we have, that's what we get called for. We have endless cases. For COVID vaccines, I mean, we basically had to, our entire phone system is basically, if you're injured by a COVID vaccine, press 1, and you get instructions to go to our website and just fill a form, because there's pretty much nothing we can do for you. Because not only do they have immunity essentially under the 1986 Act.
Change.
They have, for COVID vaccines, a completely another level of immunity called PrEP Act immunity. You can't sue those manufacturers you can't even go to the VAICP, Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, for COVID vaccine injuries.
Seriously?
Yes, you can't even go to that program. Even as limiting as that program is, you have to go to something called the CICP, the Counter Injuries Compensation Program, which we have 2 federal lawsuits right now. We're suing to strike those programs down as unconstitutional because
100%.
It's the most ridiculous system court program you've ever heard of.
Corrupt.
Who you're filing a claim with, you don't really know. Who's reviewing it, you don't know. Who's their experts, you don't know. What they're basing it on, you don't know. It's a complete black hole. There's no due process. There's no hearing. You can't confront the people they're going to use to evaluate it. You don't know who the trier of fact is.
Wow.
You don't know who the trier of laws are. You don't know anything. All you do is you submit a piece of paper, and then you get, at some day when, you don't know, you only have 1 year to file, some response, and the whole program only has about $7 million. And most of it goes to pay the staff. So we can't compensate anybody. It's a ridiculous program. When I sued...
And this is a product of the PrEP Act?
It's a product of the PrEP Act. And so I sued to render the program unconstitutional on procedural due process. I said, if this program, like the government doesn't have to afford you a remedy. But if I say to you, hey, they can have zoning laws. But I say, but you can have a variance in your house.
Yeah.
Well, I give you process for that. They can't make it unfair. It can't give you a variance and I don't give that guy a variance.
Right, exactly.
It's got to be fair. So if there's going to be a process, it has to conform to due process. This thing is the most procedurally defunct program ever. I got a call from a reporter, I forgot which national paper, after I filed the lawsuit, and they said, why are you filing the suit? I said, here, let me explain it to you in layman terms. If you're injured by a COVID vaccine, fill out a piece of paper, okay? Doesn't matter what you write on it. Use crayons. Go to your backyard, dig a hole. Bury the paper in the hole, cover it up with dirt. Now I want you to water it, make sure it gets a lot of sun, and just wait for it to grow compensation. I said, that. I literally told that to the reporter. I don't think she kept talking to me, but that is what I would describe the program as.
What has this done to your personal life? I mean, did you, like, people your family, your friends, your law school classmates? What do people think of what you're doing?
Well, it matters how much you know about this, and it matters how much you understand what I'm actually doing. Are you looking at what the New York Times is saying I'm doing, or are you looking at what I'm actually doing?
Of course.
And of course, again, to be clear, I'm an attorney. I just ask questions. In many ways, kind of like you. I ask questions. I bring suits. I'm looking for answers. I'm looking for truth. I don't really have any emotional attachment to these products like some people do. And I don't have a need for a priori assumptions.
Can we get to that? No prior assumptions? No emotional attachments? Then we can actually look at, and that's where sourcing's so crucial. If you're going to the New York Times, why? Who's their funders? Who owns that? What other things is that CEO and owner engaged in, colluding with? It's crucial. My intention here is solely to just uncover information to up our resilience, up our health. Enjoy more of this existence as God intended us to experience here. I believe these are tactics from none other than the devil himself that Jesus talked about. The ruler of this world, the God of this world, the one set off here to deceive and lie. And that's just it. So much of these organizations, the talking heads, the social media platforms oppressing our rights, not just our constitutional rights, Bill of Rights, but our freedom of speech. It's clear they are the minions of the synagogue of Satan doing his bidding. Some of them genuinely might not worship him, and they're seeking just the financial gains. So there could be slack given to some involvement, but the ones at the top, I don't know how we're allowing this. So to develop the skill required to discern and get to places that are bringing the more so truth to light is crucial.
Data, the science, the studies, they are what they are. So it really just depends who. I think some people...
Okay, the attitude you just described, which I think is rational and science-based and admirable, by the way, is not shared by a lot of people. So you said that there was a cost to your business.
Yes.
When you started representing these clients. Was there a cost to your friendships? I guess that's what I'm asking.
I would say that was there a cost to my friendships? Well, not friends that you'd want to keep, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So yes, I would say it absolutely has come with, I guess you'd say, a cost and communally, certainly back in New York. But it also comes with amazing rewards because, you're there's a community of people who really need help and they really need support. I'll tell you one more story that I think drives us home. So New York City, there were cases of measles in New York City. Remember that back in 2000, a number of years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. In which nobody died.
Yep. I think Bobby got blamed for that.
In which everyone died. No, nobody died. And nobody got, I'm not aware of any actual person who got any real issues. And there were thousands and thousands and thousands of cases. You know how I know? Because as the New York City Department of Health said, please stop having measles parties. Why? Because the only way you could get your kid back into school was if you got the vaccine or you had measles. So there were these giant measles parties occurring in Brooklyn so that people could get their kids back into school so they could then get blood work to show titers to show they had immunity. Wow. In any event, the city of New York decided the way they were going to deal with that was to make it literally illegal to exist in certain zip codes in Brooklyn if you didn't get an MMR vaccine. It was illegal. If you did not get the shot, you were violating the law.
What?
Now, let me explain to you why some people oppose the MMR vaccine. In every single dose of an MMR shot, there are literally millions of pieces from the cultured cell line of an aborted fetus in every single injection. Now, again, that might sound crazy, but I could literally pull up right now the CDC's own ingredient list for the MMR vaccine. Anybody can do this at home. Just Google vaccine excipient list, CDC, and you can pull it up and you can see it has MRC5, WI38. Those are cultured cell lines from aborted fetus because you have to grow viruses in a cell. Viruses won't just grow. They have to grow in cells. That's how they replicate. They take over the machinery of a cell. So you have to grow it on a cellular substrate. So how do they grow the rubella virus? They grow it on these cultured cell lines from aborted fetus.
Where do they get aborted fetuses?
From babies that are aborted.
From abortion clinics.
It has to be. You can't use.
Yes, I'll say yes. He's the lawyer, right? It's got to be very careful, right? Because if he were to, oh wow, I just kicked off this light. That's super distracting. I don't know how to shut it off. Yeah, he's got to be very careful, right? And what he's saying, but yeah, 100%. There's whistleblowers that have proven such. So it's so liberating. This is so freeing. When you really start diving into this information, people will, start uncovering things as they feel impressed, inspired, right? But that's where it takes no rocket scientist to really connect the dots as to why the world is the way it is right now. And it's a gift. It truly is a gift to really see without blinders on, without fear, who's really at the helm in this existence, who's really at the helm on the spiritual side and why we're here. Then we can really fulfill why we're even going through this experience. This is not our forever home. We're all visiting here. 10 out of 10 of us aren't going to make it. Like, we're just visiting. And the why to this existence is very important. And when we really see it all, then I do believe it just becomes clear and easy to love thy neighbor as you love yourself. And really ramp up this world into a world worth living in. We're losing that quickly. It's like we've had to get better at just focusing on positive, because with the diminished state, we can't handle, and it would just destroy us. But when you kind of rise above all the chaos, it's very, very liberating. Okay, we got, what is this? 30, just over 15 minutes left. Let's mash this out. Folks, I gotta tip my hat to you. I appreciate you showing up right here on New Year's Eve. It's getting late. Happy New Year. I freaking love you guys. I just look forward to sharing more information like this and coming up with actual solutions. And it's all going to start at home. It's all going to start with cleaner water, cleaner air. However we achieve all this. Luckily, we can get RO systems. We can filter our water to an extent. We can get air purifiers to an extent. But I don't know how your bank account's looking. Mine's struggling. We can't afford to do all of this. So even if we could, we do need to simultaneously address the source of the issue, because so many don't have the means. And then even beyond that, what is my computer? I've never seen that alert before. They're hacking my machine, I swear. Anyway, that's kind of long-winded. I just love you guys. And I'm excited for us all to take our roles a little more serious. And there's such a blessing to showing up on behalf of others in a huge way that just brings light and enjoyment and peace, happiness into our lives and everything we're facing. I know it can seem daunting. I've uncovered a lot of this on my personal journey here. I just can only testify from my experience is to it being freeing. Don't get consumed by the darkness. Let's just take it a step at a time. Maintain a balance of health for yourself. But the most growth is to be had when we challenge ourselves. So let's try to challenge one another. Reach out to unmuzzledchat@gmail.com. I'd love to guest you on the platform or just kick off other discussion. We need more links, support. Smash that like button. Click the share. At least send this to a few people you know. And let's continue to bring people into the know so we can address this very, very corrupt industry.
So the cells need to be alive. Okay. So you understand, like, the aborted fetal tissues has to remain alive to be used. And so, I deposed, for example, the world's leading vaccinologist, Dr. Stanley Plotkin, and that deposition is actually available on thehighwire.com. The whole deposition, 9 hours, is available there. Okay.
Parts of it are available on X, and
yes.
I watched part of it in preparation for this interview, and was so shocked and revolted by it. I was already on your side, obviously, as a parent of a child who was vaccine injured. So wow. I'm in tune with everything you're saying. But that deposition with Dr. Stanley Plotkin, who's still alive, 93, I checked, was one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in my life.
You watched the whole thing?
No, I watched selections of it.
Okay, yeah. And so then about what the clip I'm about to talk about, which is relating to just one study that was done that involved over 70 normal, healthy fetuses, right? There was nothing wrong, no abnormalities that were aborted for the purposes of this one study. I mean,
past the first trimester, but they're all older than 3 months, he said.
That's right. And some of them, absolutely. And what they do is they take those in that one study, those 70-something babies, and they they chop them up into little each body part. So they take the tongue, the lung, the liver, every body part, and they chop them up into little cubes, and then they try to culture viruses on them because they want to see which part of the body is the best suited for growing the virus used in the vaccine. And so this is, in any event, and there's a lot, anybody who wants can research about this.
So this is answering the question, why is this a religion for some people? There's some heavy stuff going on.
You mean for folks who don't want to receive the vaccine?
No, for people who support them.
Well, you have to
sacrifice quality here. Sorry, that was my takeaway from that interview. And I think you actually asked him, "Are you an atheist?" Yes, I am.
Yes.
Wow.
The case was about a religious belief that our client had, contrary to the practice of vaccination. They didn't want to vaccinate her kid, and he decided to volunteer for reasons I'll never understand to be an expert. And he came to the deposition. He didn't come to trial. He did not show up for trial. And we even sent him a subpoena due to take him after the deposition. If you ever see the deposition, he says, "Oh, well, there is this or there's that." And so I sent him a document request saying, "Hey, you said there's this and that. Give it to us." And then he brought a collateral lawsuit to quash that subpoena, believe it or not, because he did not want to give, because they don't have it. It doesn't exist. Just like this polio petition. It's not, I don't ask for things, we do, I try to do my homework beforehand. In any event, there's
this vaccines are grown with.
He's simply asking for things, the information that would support their wild, outlandish claims. And their wild, outlandish claims like the safe and effective narrative. Because, so he's asking essentially like, what would be necessary to support what labels they're already putting out there to all of us. And they're stonewalling him. They're taking other legal means to stop him from even requesting that data, that information, exposing the fraud, the Ponzi scheme, the war tactic that they're literally playing out on all of us. Unbelievable.
With the cells of aborted baby tongues.
Well, no. Well, let me be clear about that. In that study, they were trying to figure out which body part was best to use. So the one that they ended up with was actually from the lung of the aborted baby.
Wow.
So aborted fetus. So it's lung fibroblasts are the where the cells the substrate that ended up working. So they tried with tongue. It didn't work as well. And there's a number of qualities they're looking for. How well does the virus replicate? Are there other potential, viruses, and so forth, and so forth. Well, what's the best medium to do it in? And so there's...
But you said that the cells have to be alive. So where do the bodies come from? Do we know?
When the baby is aborted for the purposes, and they're typically aborted for the scientific purpose, right? I mean, they have to know beforehand for the most part, because if they abort the baby and they don't immediately act to make sure that the tissues don't die, then you can't use them in these experiments. So, and this is I'm
about as uncomfortable as I've ever been in an interview right now. This is like really beyond that this happens.
Well, I mean, there's a whole industry around. It's not not something I litigate about, but there, as you know, there is a whole industry around with regards to abortions. You've heard of humanized mice, for example.
No.
Right. So for example, in the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccine trials, for example, right, COVID-19 vaccine development process, those products have no aborted fetal tissue in them. Okay. Killed vaccines typically don't. You don't need to grow them in the same way. Well, it's not always true. Any event. But in the process of development, a lot of times they use humanized mice in order to experiment with the vaccine. And this is not just vaccines, by the way, this is across science. So they basically take, and sometimes from aborted babies, sometimes from in other ways. It doesn't have to necessarily be an aborted baby and they inject the mice with these human cells to quote unquote humanize them to then use them for experiments. You should have somebody on to talk about this. I'm not your person for this. I only know about this enough to depose around religious belief around these products, because there's a whole industry on this. But
I don't know if I want to know more. I mean,
Wow.
You do, as you hear this, you think, this can't continue. This is tampering with the secret sauce of nature. So, this will not end well at all.
At all.
So yes. I mean, what's unfortunate about it is that, and the reason I know about any of these things is because in these depositions with regards to religious beliefs, the issue of aborted fetal tissues come up. And so a lot of times they like to say, oh, well, it only involved a few babies way back when. And so I have a whole series in these depositions of showing, no, it's not just a few babies way back when. It was a lot of babies, and it's still ongoing, and this industry has only grown. And with that said, I was saying that these parents in Brooklyn, unless you want to stick on this topic, sounds like you don't.
No, I mean, you've just shocked me.
So going back to these families in Brooklyn, many of them, religious and not in different religions. Not all of them were. Many of them were ultra religious Jews, but some of them were other religions actually, who have beliefs where they do not want to participate with that product for the reasons we just discussed. Okay. And so they will not take the MMR vaccine. They won't give it to their kids. They won't take it. And so here is the city of New York saying, no, you must take it. I mean, if you didn't, and what they did is they went into like the registry, and if you were not in the registry as vaccinated, they hunted you down to your house and they showed up at your door and they gave you a violation for literally existing as God created you.
What?
As God created you, just standing in your house, just existing. And they give a violation. And so ICANN actually supported us to represent anybody that got those violations. And hundreds of people got them. And we got almost all of them dismissed before the hearing. Technical stuff. You served it this time. You did that.
But they were disproportionately ultra-Orthodox Jews from Brooklyn.
Yes. In this instance, yes.
The good news about it's a group I like in general, but they're also politically organized. So pretty dumb of the city of New York to do that.
Well, Yeah, I mean, they're organized, but also, they were very lucky in some respects in that, ICANN, which believes in informed consent, that's the name, Informed Consent Action Network, supported our firm. A lot of the policy work we do is on their behalf.
There is no informed consent.
Defend anybody with these violations. And so they put a notice out in Yiddish in the paper. If you got a violation, just call our firm. And so they did. And like I was saying, we got most of them dismissed except for like 20. Now, when we went down to the hearing, this is a long road to answer your question from earlier, is that we went down to the hearing, the head lawyer of the New York City Department of Health was on the other side in the hearing room defending the city of New York. And so we ended up in the hallway at one point, just chatting. Very nice guy, actually, actually not as much of an ideologue as a lot of the folks I encounter in health departments. And, we had worked collaboratively we got most of them dismissed even before that. And, lawyer to lawyer, he says to me, why are you doing this? He's like, I looked you up. You went to Berkeley, clerk for the chief judge, you went to late, why, and this was earlier on before I clearly was doing this work. Do you know what I mean? At this point, this is what I do. And I said to him, and this answers your question from earlier. I said to him, look, you asked me a question earlier. You said, how am I treated, right? Do I feel like I'm outcast?
Yes.
And I said to you, but there's a community that needs support. And so this is me finally answering that question. He said to me, why do you do this? And I said to him, I said, look, I want you to just imagine the following. Imagine a group of people in America right now, today. Pick a group, pick an ethnic group, a religious group, pick a group in your mind, okay? Now, I want you to imagine people go on national television and they say the most horrific things about them and they feel no filter in saying them. They talk about throwing their kids out of school, expelling them from their jobs. They call them quacks. They call them all kinds of horrible names. They do all the things to them we say we should never do to somebody, right? Because they're this religion or this ethnicity or so forth. We should never do those things. I said, that's the group you're talking about. I said, you're talking about a group of individuals. Most people vaccinate. I said to him, most people vaccinate. They choose to do it. Okay. Rare is the person in my mind who just wakes up one day and goes, you know what I want to do today? I'm going to stop vaccinating my kids so that I can be called anti-quack, anti-vax, maybe get them kicked out of school, lose friends, be called anti-science. That's what I'm going to do today. No, nobody makes that decision lightly. You to go against the social grain, and there's a strong social grain on this, especially pre-COVID.
That's a good point.
You have to have something pretty powerful happen to you.
That's right.
To make you decide, whoa, I'm not going to do that. Or I have some seriously held beliefs or one thing or another.
Right.
And I said, this is the group of people you're talking about. You're talking about a group of people who typically, they're not vaccinating because their child themselves has had somebody in their family has some kind of adverse event, some kind of bad experience.
That's exactly
and
right.
so they've realized they overcome that social conformity to do what they think they have to do in that instance. And then to add to that injury, what does society do to them? It adds insult. It calls them names. It berates them. It throws their kids out of school. It treats them in the worst ways possible. The type of stuff we should never do to people. But that's how those people are treated.
Wow.
And so when you say to me, do I feel like I've lost friends? Yeah, I've lost friends. But there's an entire community of folks out there who are that group I just described to you. And those folks don't have the government working for them. The government not only doesn't work for them, the government fights them with DOJ attorneys, berates them when they try to even file claims. Some of the reports about the Vaccine Compensation Program talks about the aggressiveness of some of the attorneys, and how they treat some of the petitioners. The government's not working for vaccine injured, it's working against the vaccine injured. It literally fights against their claims. So they're not looking out for them. Industry's not looking out for them. Who's looking out for them? They look out for each other. And that forms a really strong community of individuals of what some call the anti-vaxxers or the medical freedom folks. Really, they're just people who want to live their lives, and they don't want to talk about this.
And worship their God.
Worship their God. They don't want anything to do with the topic. They're the ones who actually don't typically. There are a few people who are very loud. They get all the attention. But most of the folks our firm represents who've got issues with this, the last thing they want is to be on the radar on this topic. And we represent a lot of people when it comes to these products. A lot of people you're open about what you just said earlier with regards to your family.
Let's shift the paradigm to where you're not ostracized by bringing up legitimate data. Unbelievable.
And your experience with vaccines, but most people, including many famous people, are not, and they don't want to be.
Yeah, I've never talked about that at all.
So I'm okay if people don't like me for what I do.
Yeah, well, I've learned more in this interview than I expected to, and you've single-handedly raised my regard for lawyers. And I never do this, but I want to do it in your case. Tell us the name of your firm.
Oh, sure. It's Siri and Glimstad, LLP. It's
in New York.
Well, we're all over. We're national. We've for our vaccine practice, which we try. We help people across the whole country.
Okay. So for people who have a family member who suffered an injury, you're open to talk to them about next steps.
Yeah. My firm does. We do vaccine injury cases in the VICP if for folks into buy vaccines.
Okay, good. Well,
then we also, but that's just 15 of the folks. But then we do vaccine policy cases. So that's like, that's actually even more folks. So a lot of the cases around COVID vaccines that you may have heard of, like suing the FDA to get all of Pfizer's clinical trial documents. We brought that case. We sued on behalf of, over a dozen members of Congress about mask mandates on planes. We struck down COVID vaccine mandate for school in California. So we have a big policy practice, and that dovetails with a lot of what we've been talking about, which is where a lot of my work is and how I find fascinating. And then we do vaccine exemption cases in all areas. We brought the case against the Air Force and the Army, where we got the injunction, prevented one of the great honors of my life, actually fighting for the people who fight for us, to preserve the thing that they swear to, which is to defend the Constitution. What is the first freedom in the Bill of Rights? The rights of religion. And what did the military do? Said, no, you don't get to have your religious beliefs with these vaccines. So that was truly one of the great honors of my life, was to defend members of the military, and them come to me, and it's humbling. They're thanking me for defending them. Well, I mean, I'm just a lawyer. I'm just going to court, and these guys those hearings were incredible. Like, it would have brought tears to your eyes to be in those injunction hearings when those members of the military come in. And anyways, so we kind of do everything. And then we do plaintiff side class action stuff, because, there is work that we need to make money. So
is Bobby Kennedy going to get confirmed, do you think?
I sure hope so. There truly is nobody who is, his whole life experience, I believe he was put on this earth to have that role. He's prayed every day for 20 years, as he always says, to be able to help save children. And in that role, he can do it. Anybody who says, well, he's going to disrupt, the way things are working. Good.
Yes.
We need disruption, because the way things are working right now, we've got a country that's got over 50% of people with a chronic health condition, often multiple conditions. Did you know that?
I did.
Okay. And we are dead last pretty much on every single health metric amongst all developed countries, despite spending almost 3 times as much on healthcare.
Yes.
Just think about those numbers.
Yeah.
We are on the fast path, not only to be the sickest country. This is the largest decline in human health, this chronic disease explosion in recorded human history that I'm aware of. Okay. And that I'm aware of. This 40-year chronic disease explosion. I don't think there's any records in recorded human history of that kind of increase. And we're spending 3 times as much, and we have the worst outcomes in the developed world. Yeah, we need to change. And Mr. Kennedy is not beholden to pharmaceutical interests. He's not beholden to health insurance companies, not beholden to anybody. He truly just wants to do what's right. I think it's a rare quality. And he has gone through the fire, and he does not care what anybody says about him. He does not care. He only cares about what's right and what's true. And it is exactly the type of leadership and leader that we need in this country. And so, God, I hope he is confirmed.
Aaron Siri, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Wow. What an amazing episode. What sound do we kick off here? We just going to get ramped up? For frick's sakes. Yeah, let's help him get confirmed. Just to recap a bit. How is it? The ingredients of these products don't even match the label. The corrupt mafia ran industry now with immunity mandated to our children. They do not even have the data nor the studies required to make the claims they are making. It was all discussed. It's all right there. It's clear, laid out before us. How are we still not properly informed? Probably most important of all, we need to get this information out as to many people as possible. Please share, post this on your socials. Let's just get it out. I don't believe I will include the link to this the episode we just played with Tucker and Aaron there in the description below. I'll post it as soon as we wrap up. It's just so crucial to get this information out. Like they just ended with, over 50% of America in chronic disease? Are you kidding me? That hits too close to home. Dealing with Lyme disease, our function, everything is at stake. Our military, our children. Okay. I haven't read the last because today's the last day, 2024. Let's read from the Jesus is Calling. It's December 31st here in Arizona. We are nearing the time clock. Happy New Year's to you all. May God bless this platform to grow and actually lead to more solutions, to see more results, and the needle moved in the right direction. Okay, December 31st. As this year draws to a close, receive my peace. This is still your deepest need, and I, your Prince of Peace, long to pour myself into your neediness. We're all needy right now. Are you kidding? It would be to our detriment not to acknowledge that. My abundance and your emptiness are a perfect match. I designed you to have no sufficiency on your own. I created you as a jar of clay set apart for sacred use. I want you to be filled with my very blessing, permeated through and through with peace. Thank me for my peaceful presence. Regardless of your feelings, whisper my name in loving tenderness. My peace, which lives continually in your spirit, will gradually work its way through your entire being. I'm grateful for 2024 because I experienced a lot of that. I wouldn't have been able to continue showing up. Like, who in their right mind wants to paint this kind of target on their back? It's why I want to help bridge the gap for the working man and woman out there that wants to see that change for the better. Help us achieve that together. There's 3 biblical references. I challenge you to check them out. We got Isaiah 9:6, 2 Corinthians 4:7, and John 14:26 through 27. It's interesting. I did make it into the gym today. Kind of helped get the rusty gears going to an extent, but one of the close gentlemen I know there, as we're chatting, I liked his answer. Not much hype going into this particular night. And I'm like, well, yeah, what makes it so special? It's just all the programming we've been given. Sure, to reference tomorrow is 2025 versus 2024. There's a difference there, right? But tomorrow night's just as important as tonight. The night after that is just as important as tonight. The night after that. Let's fulfill the opportunities we have. Lift each other up and create a better world together. I freaking love you guys. If you want to support me directly in this pursuit, which has been a grave investment, and secure me in order to continue to do this, consider the direct Venmo, Cash App, buy me a coffee link, or even the GoFundMe. Other than that, check out our affiliations. We got Patriot Mobile offering discounts. That's supporting a company that more so aligns with my morals and values. Why put money towards a tyrannical, oppressive company that's spying on you, using your hard-earned money against you, when we can support the only Christian conservative mobile network out there? Information doesn't hurt you. Give them a call tomorrow. Mention UNMUZZLED. They will take care of you. Preparation's crucial. We don't know what's ahead. I know none other than EMP Shield. Like, that is the best singular investment we could do. Check that out. You're getting $50 off in the link below for every product you order. At minimum, get one on one of your family's vehicles sooner versus later. Ensure your steel mule will work. We don't know what evil has planned. Check out Bond Charge products. I don't know if they're 24 or 5% discount still going on throughout the holidays. If not, shucks darn, you might have missed it. But if it is, take advantage of that through the link below. We still have a 15% off, so don't be dismayed if the 25 is already over and done with. But they got a whole slew of products that's going to help breathe health into your life. There's Masterpiece. That tincture helps eradicate the sprays and the heavy metals and toxins and forever chemicals we're accumulating that, yes, is diminishing our bodies. I can't wait. I just ordered more of that. This time I ordered a couple bottles, so I'm hoping that shows up freaking tomorrow. I can't wait to get my hands on that stuff. We got a few other things. Check out the Root brand in that episode. Amazing. Wendy and Jill hit it out of the park. I can't wait for those products to show up myself, and more on that futuristically. I can't wait to hopefully provide another solution. Ultimately, I want to eradicate the need of all these band-aids. This is what I view it as. Why? We're nowhere near normal. Let's get to normal by knocking out the attacks that are taking place, and they're manipulating the data and censoring. It's clear what they're trying to manipulate on contrails, get you to where you don't even believe your own eyes. You can watch a jet with a dissipating trail right behind it, or a jet with none at all, and then a jet like painting the whole sky from horizon to horizon, and it's lingering all day. There's a difference and a distinction between a contrail and a chemtrail, and it's indisputable. They are spraying us. Help us address this. And the simple fact, Tennessee's done it. Kentucky's in the process of doing it. Florida's in the process. Let's ramp it up in every state across this great nation, or once a great nation. Well, I mean, we still got some freedoms. I'm still very grateful to be here. We got all the other affiliations. I'm running out of wind. Just check them out. If it speaks to you, if you got any questions, if you got a testimony, you want to talk about any of these products or affiliations, good or bad, reach out. Would love to hear the experience you've had. You know what? If you like some of the merch I've been rocking, check out Black Eagle Apparel. I believe they're the bottom one. I don't know why. I should probably raise them up, make it easy for you to scroll down. I mean, I don't know. But he's the OG. Alex is an amazing man. He's giving you 10% off. Yeah, with UNMUZZLED, promo code UNMUZZLED. Let's start repping products. Like, be a walking billboard and not fearful. In fact, I've had nothing but pretty much amazing interactions and conversations and fist bumps, and people just love your shirt. And that is exclusively the only place you could actually support us, by getting an UNMUZZLED chat tee. I need to hit him up about more designs. But I freaking love you guys. Happy New Year. I hope we can gain more traction in this next year. Not just, yes, in growth in this podcast, because that means we'll have more cards to play, more of an impact to have, more calls to action or solutions to provide. But at the end of the day, we just want to see more results. We want to see the best version of you. So that's a communal effort. There's just so much information out there. But we appreciate your love and support. As long as that's there, I don't know how I'm going to be able to walk away from this. May our loving Creator bless you this wonderful day. And until next time, take care.